Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This is David Patrick Harry with Church of the Eternal Logos, and I am joined by a very special guest today, a documentary filmmaker, a content creator, very popular YouTuber, your mate Tom. How you doing today, brother?
What's going on, brother? Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on. And yeah, man, it's been really interesting because I've been watching your content for like the past, I know, year or so. So it's been...
What? Really?
Yeah, interesting journey. Yeah, I think I saw an interview with like you and Jay Dyer, and then that kind of got me opened up to your channel. And like we were just talking about before, we got a lot of similar roots, in the new age. So it's been really cool, man.
Absolutely. I mean, that's partly why I was really excited for this conversation. I had been familiar with your stuff. Your YouTube channel, Your Mate Tom, is much larger than even my old YouTube channel that promoted a lot of the psychedelic stuff, Fractal Universe. And so I was familiar with you, and I saw that you did an interview with Jay. That's probably, a couple months ago or something like that, a few months ago.
Yeah. It was like earlier this year.
And I just that you're in conversation with Jay, I was like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. Wouldn't expect that. But I'm really surprised to hear you just told me that you'd watched this channel for a year. I'm blown away because just the psychedelic new age angle to a lot of your content in your YouTube channel. So like what spawned you to create Your Mate Tom? Before we even get into everything.
Yeah, it all started from my first ayahuasca experience. Basically, it just, I was like at my rock bottom, or at least at that stage in my life, I was at rock bottom. Depressed, anxious, lost in life. You've heard the story probably a million times.
Right.
Found ayahuasca by listening to Joe Rogan and kind of slowly getting into the psychedelic world, lucid dreaming, Buddhism, dabbling my toes in the new age. And yeah, went to Peru, had this life-changing ayahuasca experience, and that made me basically just talk about my experience. I got the message to basically, hey, you need to share this. You need to start making a blog and start vlogging about this stuff. And I did San Pedro as well. That was like in the same 2-week period. And yeah, man, just went home. I was studying psychology at this time, and I just started a blog that went actually really well, very well received. And then from that, I just made a video, and it didn't go like viral or anything, but it did all right for my first video. And then, yeah, that's where it all started. And I just it wasn't purely on psychedelics. It was more about like my exploration of self-development, where I'm at spiritually and all that kind of stuff. It just so happened to be a lot about psychedelics.
Right. So today's conversation, I really want to talk to you about your own spiritual journey. Because as we're mentioning, I feel like we have so much overlap with these psychedelic experiences and where that kind of puts you in regards to sort of spiritual paradigms. New Age, illuministic framework where you are God, or you are the universe, or you're the sentient apparatus of the universe, Alan Watts-esque.
Right.
So
Leogora.
Exactly. And so I know that you mentioned that you're familiar with the Connor Murphy stuff, and maybe we can get into that here in a few. But really, I just want to learn about your spirituality, your spiritual journey. And so could you start us off with like, what is Tom's basis for spirituality? What did you grow up in?
I grew up in a Catholic home, but my mom wasn't, because she's from Chile in South America, and she wasn't too into it. Like she just believed it just because of what her parents told her. But my grandma, she was like the really hardcore Catholic, going to church every week and even taking me along. And I went to a Catholic primary school. So I was aware of it. But I never really, I don't know, I felt like they didn't teach me anything. Like even after school, I was like, I couldn't even tell you what Christianity is like really about. And I don't know, I guess I grew up as a believer, but then certain things happened. And I remember having like, I would even like curse God. I went to the point where I was like, if you turn back time, or if you stop this from happening, then I will believe in you. Or like, kind of bartering with God. Of course, that doesn't end well, ever.
No, it doesn't usually end well.
Yeah. And yeah, I just kind of went anti-Christian, I guess, for a long time. I hated church. I just hated religious people and all that kind of stuff. And then I went atheist. And then that didn't last very long because I realized that atheism was like, at that stage, I'm like, oh, this is just as dumb as religion, you know, because no one knows.
Right.
No one knows. So then I became agnostic. Just, I don't know. I don't want to think about it too much. And then, yeah, and that's after many years of kind of drugs and alcohol and going down dark path and reaching this ayahuasca point. And yeah, that's when I went into Buddhism. Buddhism was probably my foundational framework for my beliefs.
So what was your takeaway, just to get a timeline and framework? So you grow up Catholic. When you have this ayahuasca ceremony, when you're studying psychology, how old are you? Like, again, just place me, where are you at in your timeline, in your life, in your journey?
Sorry. Yes, no, I was about 21, I would say.
And may I ask, how old are you right now?
29.
29. Well, by the way, everyone, congratulate Tom. He is getting married to a lovely young woman. So yes, congratulations to you two.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited. It's about that time. I was telling you, like, you know, we've been dating for over 9 years. So
well, it's about damn time you pulled.
I wanted to get past. I wanted to get past the warranty period. You know what I mean? I'm like, just in case, because you don't know. People change over time. So I wanted to like really make sure. And I'm like, yeah, she's definitely the one. So okay. So when did you get into Buddhism then? Because I'm really wanting to look at your paradigm. That's what I'm really interested in. So I would say,
go ahead.
About 20 years old. I remember going to Thailand.
Very beautiful.
And it was awesome. But this was like my peak, just getting absolutely smashed. You know, just drinking like stupidly. And I just remember having like a really kind of low rock bottom experience. And that's when I went into like a Buddhist temple and I just felt something. I felt like connected, and that kind of got me interested in Buddhism. It was something about the vibe, just going in there and being at that place in my life where something has to change. You know what I mean? Like there's such a void in my heart that I just couldn't fill. And Buddhism was just there, I guess.
Right.
You know? And that's when I started getting into learning about the concept of meditation, lucid dreaming, all this kind of the Four Noble Truths, the middle path, all that good stuff. You know, listening to a lot of spiritual YouTubers. I remember like Spirit Science back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Infinite Waters, diving deep once again.
Yeah.
Leo Gura, actually, he was like one of my biggest influences at that time.
Oh really?
To the point.
Yeah, I never got into him too much.
To the point where I even downloaded his YouTube videos on the audio CD track and would play it in my car. Like I haven't done that to anybody. Yeah, I was like a hardcore fan. And ironically, I actually stopped being a fan once he started his psychedelic journey. You can tell on his YouTube journey, as soon as he had his first psychedelic experience, that's when he started, losing his marbles, let's say. And then that's when I kind of started getting turned off. But anyways, to sum it all up, basically, Buddhism would have been like my foundational framework, but it was more new age because I was like picking and choosing from different religions what I agreed with, you know, emotional appeal.
So then you actually
Buddhism would have been the main.
You actually traveled to Peru. Like I participated in an ayahuasca ceremony, but it was one of the low end ones under the rug, Southern California. You get I had a Hawaiian shamaness. So I never got down to Peru. So you're describing a 20-year-old. You go to Thailand, you're kind of embedded. Again, I could already see then the phenomenology, right? The experience is what's driving your spiritual reality, how you're deciphering what's true, what's not true.
Yes. Direct experience was my king, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I based everything on.
So what made you decide that you wanted to go have this ayahuasca ceremony? Did you get into Terrence McKenna or something?
I did. I wasn't too hardcore into him, but I was like kind of into him. I was more like Joe Rogan, Aubrey Marcus, Graham Hancock. Those were like my guys. Yeah. And especially after hearing Graham Hancock's experience after he was like a weed addict for like 20 years and he had ayahuasca and it finally broke his addiction. And that was like, whoa, that's incredible. So that was kind of what put me over the edge. And I was just a very lost person on this. I remember I was finishing my electrical engineering course and I didn't like it. I was kind of miserable and just like smoking way too much, drinking, eating shit, just spiritually void. And I had experienced mushrooms at this point. I had my first trip, but it wasn't for any spiritual reasons. It was just like curiosity, like, hey, let's try this new drug. And I've talked about this on my channel, so I don't want to get into it too much, but it was like the best and worst day of my life. So like the first half of it was like, oh my God, time is an illusion, deja vu, like having these experiences, like that reconnection to nature.
Right.
Because at that stage, I wasn't into I was like, I would have much rather play video games all weekend long than step outside and go for a walk, you know?
Right, right.
Yeah, so it did definitely help me connect with nature more and become more empathetic, for sure. It opened me up because this was when I was like I was just very closed, unempathetic, like a dick, I guess. And in Australian culture, because like I kind of grew up in more of not the underworld, but kind of the rebels, you know, the bad kids, I guess. So you have to, just to survive, you have to have like a hard exterior. You know what I mean? You can't be vulnerable. It's like, all right, mate, eat some cement and harden the fuck up, you know? Yeah, it's just straight up. And so obviously after so many years of just holding shit in and trauma and all that kind of stuff, it just all built into this point where I was like, I need to do something, man. Otherwise something really bad's going to happen.
Wow.
I might end up dead or in jail or who knows,
right,
who knows.
Right.
And I remember having a DMT trip, actually. This was like a few months just before my ayahuasca trip.
Oh.
And it was so horrific. It was like, from how I interpreted it at the time, I don't know what it was, but I felt the voice of Satan say, you just wait till you get to Peru. That's when we're really going to get you. But the voice was me. So I was like, I was monologuing, but it wasn't me. So I was like, what? It shook me to my core. I was like, what was that? And then that kind of made me question this ayahuasca stuff. I'm like, shit, should I do it? I ended up doing it anyway, of course. And the first ceremony was like truly horrific. And I almost left the retreat because I didn't want to continue. And then the shaman basically told me that this is just my ego flaring up and that I need to trust the medicine and surrender to it, yada, yada, yada. And to be fair, my second ceremony was like the polar opposite. It was like that enlightening one with the universe. I understand things now. It gave meaning to my suffering and gave me this perspective of my life, which it made sense. So I kind of accepted it all. And yeah, I left the retreat like a new man. It really did change me. And not just me saying this, like my family, my friends, they even referred to me as like, you know, it was pre-ayahuasca time and post-ayahuasca time. Like it really was like a really profound shift. Wow. But, you know, and yeah, that's when I started psychology, started my channel and started getting deeper into it.
Well, what were some of the most obvious changes in your behavior and stuff that other people were noticing?
For once, I was smiling more often. That was a big one. More open, more emotional. Because again, I was very like cold and super shy, and like I was still shy, but I was like more willing to open myself up. Whereas back then, before I would have just locked myself away or something, and just more addicted, more miserable. I was like dealing with like severe anxiety and depression and like really heavy mental health issues. And so the biggest change would have been just having a bit more of a peace of mind, which lasted for a while. I'd say maybe 6 months. So it's pretty good. But then that's when I think after that, I think when I started feeling the effects wearing off, like I guess that spiritual high, I think that's when I started going deeper into mushrooms. And then I did like my first heroic dose. Not a good idea. So I did it because I thought at that stage, I'm like, you know what? I've done ayahuasca. How bad could a heroic dose of mushrooms be? And of course, it completely hyper slapped me into the ground. And I was gone, man. I did it even by myself in nature. Because I was like, yeah, I even brought a journal with me and everything. But I was so high up that you can't even write words. I couldn't even string a sentence together. And I had to get my girlfriend to save me. I'm like, come quick. And like, as I'm typing, the letters are like fractalizing and floating out of the screen. So like time was running out. So if I didn't message her to come and get me, who knows what would have happened. But yeah, I basically went deeper into the mushroom world, especially. Yeah.
Did you ever get in the LSD and the MDMA scene, or like were you going to raves or stuff? I mean, because all this stuff is sort of tied into the same culture, you know. And for me, I did the heroic doses. I remember I tried to eat 8 grams of mushrooms one time because I was yearning. I was sounds like much more deeper into the Terrence McKenna stuff, and so I loved the sort of Satori experiences on LSD where I would sit there, and often I did mine by myself. So I was very much interested in just getting alone and getting into these altered psychedelic states high and just sitting there and thinking. And so the LSD allowed me to kind of just sit there and I felt like I was missing out because I was listening to all this Terrence McKenna stuff, and he's talking about the hyperdimensional self-transforming machine elves. He's talking about the little leprechauns, all these people, all these experiences he had where he was interacting with things. I never had any of that stuff. So I was like, man, I got to get there. So I tried 3.5 grams, an eighth of mushrooms. Didn't do it. So I tried the heroic dose, 5 grams of mushrooms.
Oh no.
Didn't do it. Now I would have good times, bad. Yeah.
5 grams did nothing.
I mean,
Crazy.
I was tripping, but it
right,
wasn't.
But not to that level.
No, yeah, not to that level. Even when I did 8 grams, I wasn't at that level. I was very high. I remember I tried an entire strip of acid. That was 10 hits.
Whoa. Did you fast?
Huh?
Did you fast beforehand?
Just like 6 hours. But
okay, so you did. Oh,
yeah,
that's weird.
dude, I was super intense. Like I did it by myself. I didn't want people around. And I never got to those places. Even on the DMT, I would smoke DMT. I didn't encounter the self-transforming machine elves. The craziest experience I had was I was actually this was during my master's degree in Illinois. I was at a friend's house. He had DMT. So he offered it. I said, yeah, I'm definitely down. So he packed up a pipe, and I just sat there and tried to hit as many hits as I could. I think I got 4 in. And then I laid back on the couch. You go into an altered, state. And mine was almost like a 50s diner. It was black and white tile, red leather booths, like the chrome around the tables. Just like the sort of archetypal 50s diner in America.
Whoa,
and
like
and everybody's in business suits with the top hats, with the suitcases, with the ties. They look like, the Men in Black or something like that. It's kind of the archetype of the time traveler. So if you ever looked at Imaginary Foundation's art, you always see a man that has a top hat, sometimes an umbrella, a suitcase, and he's dressed in a suit. If you just look up art for the archetype of the time traveler, that's what you're going to get. And so it was like I was in this 50s diner with all these guys, and the wall was like a spinning galaxy, and women and men were around, and they could see me, I could see them. It was incredibly vivid.
Whoa.
But we didn't speak. And so some of those time traveler guys, they would walk into this spinning galaxy, and then they would be, teleported somewhere else or something. But that was, I think I did DMT 3 or 4 more times. Again, smoking as much as I can to get into these spaces. Never did it get me to these states where Terrence McKenna was. And so for me, the psychedelics were like, I was always trying to it was always like this process, this journey of trying to get to this place. Because if I got to this place, then I could ask these things, these questions that I had lined up, and it never got there. And eventually for me, having done all the psychedelics I could do in as much amounts as I wanted,
all of them.
Well, at least the tryptamines.
Yeah.
So I never did a Boga or any of that stuff, but the tryptamines, and I came to a place where I just felt like there got to be more than that, and so that's what kind of set me then on getting a little bit more serious about my spirituality and all that stuff. But it sounds like for you, the psychedelics, because you weren't as like insatiable of trying to get to these indescribable places to talk to these unknown entities,
To be fair, I was at the start until I had my first really big. I actually went beyond the heroic dose of mushrooms. I had about 7.5 grams, but these are from one of the most poisonous. Most potent species in the world, and so that probably would have been equivalent to about 10 grams. And that's when I had my first I went too far in, where reality was breaking apart too much, to the point where my skin cells were dissolving, my teeth were falling out. It was really heavy, connecting with these shamanic spirits, and spirits literally flowing through my body, where I would have these kind of involuntary spasms, and gone so deep into it that you couldn't even speak. It was too much information at once. And just dissolving into nothingness and basically going to just a pure madness in a sense, with certain waves of relief, of healing, what I thought at the time.
Right. Yeah.
And so that was the last time that I specifically did psychedelics to go that deep and to communicate with entities. I think after that, it was purely for like self-development, healing purposes. And if the spiritual stuff comes, cool, but I don't want to chase it anymore, because I felt like I almost died by trying to do that with that huge mushroom dose.
And that was that was the experience after the ayahuasca trip?
Yes. Yeah.
So about 6 months after that, you went deep into deep waters.
Yeah, even in the DMT land, I went into the Jester realm a few times, like that. How I would describe it was like a satanic circus playground with jesters with sharp teeth just laughing at you and your pain. Like, ha ha ha, silly human, screw you, ah! And then I'll get scared and they'll laugh and shit. It was like, and I heard from certain people, I don't know how true this is, but I heard that they're like the gatekeepers almost, like they're like the first level of that transcendent realm. And that once you go past that realm, that's when you go into the machine elf territory. I don't know how true or false that is,
right.
But I never got past the Jester realm.
Well, and it's so dependent on your own biology and psychology.
For sure.
Like I remember, I've talked about this on the stream. I won't get into too deep details, but I had a friend, again, because during my undergraduate, I was known as the sort of psychedelic guy. I was studying religion, traveling, and he wanted to have an LSD experience. And he was going to go to medical school and all this stuff. So I said, oh, yeah, man, come on over. We'll have an experience. And I just gave him a little bit. And I took 2-3 times as much as he did. And just within 30, 40 minutes, he's in a different place. Within an hour, I'm in front of him. I'm talking to him. He's not seeing me. He's communicating to somebody. It's not me. And just had a wild experience where I basically had to babysit him all night. He was walking into the side of the house. We had to go outside because he was just uncontrollable. He was moving around somewhere. He was talking to somebody. He kept saying, like, what is the meaning of my life? What is the meaning of my life? And then eventually I put a sweatshirt on him at like 4 a.m. while we're outside. Like that. He's back. Hey, Pat, what's going on, man? Hey, bro, you all right? He's like, yeah, dude, why I got all these bruises? You've been walking into a brick house for the last 4 hours, just
whoa.
And then he said he had this great experience and that he talked to this goddess figure and she told him, gave him answers to these questions and stuff. So that really opened my eyes to how individual these substances affect people, and that I was really doing things that I had no business doing. That I thought I was so educated, I could recount all the different stuff about the tryptamines and the different psychedelics and the neurotransmitters and the mimicry of serotonin. But as I mentioned to you privately, it's like now that I've found Christ, now that I'm actively trying to do what is right in all aspects of my life, I am just so thankful to God that I got out of all that stuff relatively unscathed, because now I have people reaching out to me who they had friends doing this stuff, and some of them are scarred for life. They have terrible trips. Something traumatic happens while they're tripping on the psychedelics. I mean, just crazy, crazy stuff that I just feel so thankful that I'm able to do what I'm doing now in a healthy, at least I perceive myself to be healthy and aware.
You look pretty healthy.
But I imagine you probably feel the same, just a thankfulness.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. There have been so many times where I could have easily have gone lost in that void and not have come out. Because even the experiences that I'm telling you now, which were like really scary, that wasn't even the peak of it until I went back to Peru about 2 years after my first experience. Oh, well, and that's when I had like...
Take us there. So sorry. I didn't mean to cut off your journey.
No. It's a lot to get into. We don't have to, get into all of it.
Well, I want to get into, again, shaping your spirituality and your spiritual experiences to then get into, because, again, the point of this is that you've actually been reading the Orthodox Study Bible. that it's maybe connected a few dots. Now, however
it's weird to say out. It's funny because it's so weird to say out loud.
It is
like, dude, really? I ended up going back to Christianity. Like, that's so unexpected. That I don't know, man.
How would you before even getting into some of these more intense psychedelic experience again to shape up your journey? Because the point is, I want people to see the journey. So the end point right now, and then it's not the end point, it's a process point, it's a transitionary point. But what you're working out right now is moving in the direction towards Christ. It's moving in the direction towards more traditional forms of Christianity, correct?
Yes, particularly Orthodox Christianity. And I think Protestant Christianity would have opened my eyes a little bit, and I went deeper. And I'm like, oh, maybe it's Catholicism. Maybe they were right all along. And then I went deeper into like kind of Jay Dyer and you guys, and kind of explaining the distinctions between Catholicism and Orthodoxy. And then eventually I kind of started leaning towards Orthodoxy. So here we are.
I know.
The eternal church of the logos.
I know. Well, I plan on getting into some apologetics. We'll get into logos here in a bit. But again, just whatever, we don't have to get into too much detail, but whatever you find prominent. So tell us then, you said we're not even scratching the surface of the sort of deep waters you eventually began swimming in. So you have this big mushroom experience about 6 months after your first ayahuasca experience. You're kind of embedded in an Eastern mystic ethos. That's the sort of zeitgeist you're in, the New Age, Eastern mysticism.
Alan Watts, Leogura, all those guys.
So fill in the timeline then of these experiences, and then the next time you go to Peru. And again, how are your beliefs changing? Are they not changing? Are they being reinforced? Just describe the spiritual journey.
Yeah. So this was that last big mushroom trip that I had, and it scarred me for a long time, at least in terms of going back to mushrooms. I don't think I tripped until maybe 3 years after that, mushroom-wise. And that kind of taught me the lesson of like, you know what, maybe I shouldn't do psychedelics by myself. Maybe I should only do it with a shaman, right? I need some sort of protection. I guess that it taught me to take the spiritual realm seriously.
Yeah.
And it's not just about doing it by yourself and thinking that, you can handle these kind of realms, because they have a very quick way of humbling you if you go too far.
Yes.
Anyone, even, all the psychonauts will tell you this, Terrence McKenna, all of them. You want to go into it with a great deal of respect.
Yep.
And so, I guess that's ended my journey of like kind of tripping solo, at least big doses, because there's a huge difference between low and high dose. And I guess about 6 months, this was when I was working at Vodafone, which is a telecommunications company. And I was just like working, saving to travel, because we were going to go to Peru, Mexico, and Canada. At this stage, I was going to collaborate with Psych Substance, which at the time, still now, is the biggest psychedelic channel on the planet. And then, I was just working, and eventually I quit my job, actually. I was like, it was the last job I had. I was like, I'm going to quit this job, and I'm going to go all out on YouTube and just remove that safety net. And I went to Peru with my girlfriend this time. I brought her along with me.
Okay.
And the first ceremony was fine. It's pretty overwhelming, but it was night 2, man. Night 2, that was the real horrific, like completely dissolving into madness, not knowing what, like it was, I guess, a form of ego death, because it was like, I couldn't even understand the concept of simple words like friend, family, Tom, what is this? Like this, it was like this downward spiral, just losing it. And then it felt at the time like it was some sort of like a malevolent spirit, like Mother Ayahuasca almost trying to kill me. That's what I felt. And I went to that stage, I'm like, oh shit, this is serious stuff. And I basically went to the conclusion, like the only way out of this is for me to kill myself, because like how I'm like in this eternal place of just torture. Like I felt the collective suffering of humanity. I was like living through like all the like African child soldiers doing horrendous shit and murder, but viscerally feeling it. So it wasn't just like an imaginary thing. It was like I was literally living through this kind of stuff, and it was like such horrific pain, like the totality of the collective human suffering, I guess. And I went outside, I was freaking out. screaming to these facilitators, like, come on, get a gun to my head or do something. Like, we're in the middle of the Amazon, so there's no way you could drive me to hospital, or I wanted like a benzo or just something to kind of get this medicine out of my system, because it was so full on. Every second was excruciating. Like, it really was, to the point where they tried to stop me. They had to pin me down. I was like on the ground, kind of kicking, and I had like 3 guys on me. And then the shaman came and she like energetically sucked the ayahuasca out, gave me a wedge of lemon and some salt. And I came down pretty quickly, and it kind of went back to normal. I was like, whoa, what the hell happened there? But just the fact that that happened, and my girlfriend was there the whole time, right? I even had
Now, was she tripping while she was watching this happen to you?
Halfway through,
okay.
She was. So at the very start of the freak out, she was still waiting for it to kick in. But I remember I wanted to say goodbye to her, because at that moment, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. I'm gonna have to die, because I can't get out of this. Or even if I do get out of this, I'm not going to go back normal. I'm going to be in like some sort of mental institution or have schizophrenia for the rest of my life. Or either way, it's not going to be good, even if I get out of this.
Right.
So it's like best case scenario, I'm going to end up completely out of my mind. And yeah, I remember even hugging her goodbye, like just weeping, crying, like, I'm sorry I have to do this to you. Like, it was like really heavy, man. And then that all ended, and she was like so scared, because she even had this whole trip of like, man, my boyfriend's going to be in this mental institution, and then my parents are going to be like, I told you. You know, because our parents actually warned us not to do ayahuasca at all. Our whole family were like, dude, what are you doing? That's like, because they were aware of like the dark side of it.
Right.
Because I think ayahuasca used to be, just a bit of a side note, but ayahuasca used to be legal in Chile, and then it got banned because someone sacrificed a baby during a ceremony. Yeah. And then I think since then, the general public kind of got a bit like, oh, that's kind of freaky.
Right.
You know? And yeah, basically after this, almost miraculously, I actually continued the ayahuasca retreat. Everyone thought I was going to leave, but I didn't want to end it that way. You know, I didn't want my last trip to be like this horrible trauma, scarring experience. So I went through the entire retreat, which was roughly 2 weeks. And I had some positive ceremonies after that, but I didn't really realize the severity of the trauma until afterwards, because I kind of shook it off like, okay, whatever, I lost my mind, but it was all meant to be. Again, the trust, right? Everything that happens in the psychedelic experience is good, right? All of these demons are just you helping you surrender and accept or whatever. You know, this was the paradigm that I was under. So yeah, that kind of finished. And yeah, I even did San Pedro after that. And then the San Pedro guy, because this was just before I was going to Canada, and I was going to collaborate with Psych Substance, and we were going to trip on LSD. And then the San Pedro facilitators, like, he's like, yeah, I think you should stop the psychedelics. This is a San Pedro facilitator, like, to me and my fiance Yesenia. He's like, yeah, I think you should take this time to relax. You don't need to continue this work. You know, you have a lot to process. But I didn't listen, of course. My girlfriend told me. My girlfriend's been right the whole time. Sorry, my fiance.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, she was right the whole time. I basically brought her into all this kind of stuff. And yeah, man. Then Canada happened, did the whole collab, and then I did Boga, and then that was really
talk about that. I never got into Boga because of the intensity. I heard that it's more of a traumatic high, and basically when you come down, that's the euphoric experience is when you get off of it.
That's a good way to describe it. It's a traumatic high. Yeah, pretty much. It's a very long experience, like 24 hours, I remember lasting. But it was really about 3 days, like mentally and spiritually, the place that I was at. So even though the second and third day I wasn't like tripping, but I was in such a existential state. And that's when I had my existential crisis. That's when how I understand it now is my connection to God was severed, and I was lost in the abyss, basically. And that's when it was like, because I've had dark trips before, but then, you know, once it's over and you get out of it, you're like, oh, thank God I'm out of this. You know, I'm like kind of back to normal relatively. But this was a paradigm shift. That's what was so scary. It was sobering. It was like basically that Earth, life is just suffering, a nihilistic kind of framework. That Earth is just a satanic matrix. It wasn't even nihilistic. It was like it wasn't that life was meaningless. It's that life was evil. Like this was all a trick. You know, it was like really horrible. And that's when I was like in this grieving stage. So I was in that emotional, like imagine like someone close to you just died and you have that sinking feeling of losing someone.
Right.
That feeling stayed there for a long time, man, like 6 months. So I was just living in this constant grieving state that my girlfriend's going to die, my mom's going to die, I'm going to die, everyone I know is going to die, but constantly, but not being able to shake out of it. Wow. And I was so sensitive because I couldn't even walk outside without absorbing like kind of all the suffering of humanity sort of thing. So it was like ultra empathetic, but in a very unhealthy way, where all I was doing was absorbing the bad stuff and kind of carrying that. And I was actually, it's kind of related, but not really, but I was a vegan for like 3 years.
It's definitely related.
For sure. I just wanted to be nice. But I think after eating meat for the first time in 3 years, that's really helped me a lot. Because looking back on it now, like during all this state, I feel like I could have gotten out of that much quicker if I started eating meat. Because I was like too sensitive, too open. I didn't have anything to like ground me.
Right.
You know? And so, yeah, that was like a long time, man, of just trying to climb out of this hole and just figure it out. And I think that's when Christ started to appear. I didn't get deep into it, but my heart opened up.
Wow. So Jesus. How old are you? Just trying to piece the timeline together. When exactly was all this happening?
25.
25. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, roughly 25.
So you're kind of dabbling with mushrooms here or there. You had your 2 ayahuasca experiences, DMT.
Yep.
And then
I had a fair few mushroom experiences, and after that, a Boga experience. I didn't trip for 2 years, nothing.
And you were still making psychedelic content though, related content online.
Yes, it was more at that stage like that was my branding. So the way that I approached it was, I'm making videos about self-development and spirituality, but I'm just going to brand it as psychedelics. So even if it's magic mushrooms or LSD, the substance of the video is always about breaking down psychology and philosophy and my own life. You know, I didn't obsess too much about the pharmacology. I did at the start, but then I was like,
it can get kind of tedious and boring.
Yeah, exactly. Like, because if you're like in the middle of an ayahuasca trip and demons are attacking you, I don't think that me knowing that it's a serotonin looking molecule, like that's not going to help me, you know? Right. So, but yeah, man, that's
so this
pretty
is fascinating
much it.
Because one of the things that I think kept me into the psychedelics throughout my 20s is I didn't have many traumatic experiences. I remember one bad trip that I had, and it was tripping with another dude that I had met during my master's degree, who he wanted to do it. He had never done any of this. And they, even Terrence McKinnon back then said, always be leery of tripping with, people you don't know. Mm-hmm. And we did, and it just got really weird. I remember then later being by myself and just feeling totally not myself. Again, I had done this stuff quite a bit before, but it almost scared me, like, what, am I possessed? Again, not that I was even into a sort of dichotomy of good and evil, angels and demons. Didn't really have a paradigm like that, but I just felt really not myself throughout this high. And that's really one of the few times that I can really pinpoint, that was definitely a bad experience. Most of my experiences were pretty decent. A lot of them I enjoyed quite a bit. And so that's why I feel like I just kept wading deeper into those waters, taking more substances. But your second ayahuasca experience and your Boga experience, that's like, dang.
I know. I kept going as well. Because I wanted to trust. I really wanted to believe. I'm like, maybe it's just my own crap. Maybe it was all for the good anyway. Like, you know what I mean? Like, kind of,
right.
That's the basic psychonaut ethos. It's like, no matter what bad happens to you, it's all for the good anyway.
Right. So
but then I started getting messages from people more and more often about more lost souls, I guess. People having a bad trip and just...
Oh, they started reaching out to you?
A lot. Still to this day. I get a lot of people reaching out to me, just being lost.
Right.
Yeah, having a real bad trip and just not. It's like, shit, am I going to be normal again, or maybe falling into
what's your advice
solipsism?
to those people?
Groundedness. Well, number one, stop taking psychedelics, any drugs for that matter. Eat meat. And say like even saying this advice sounds so insane when you're deep into this paradigm.
Right.
But it helps, man. It really does, to like ground yourself on earth, going out in nature, spending time. It's like so simple advice. Like I'm not even telling you anything revelatory. It's just be a human in society and just live life, you know?
Right.
Be with good people. And I would also say, if you're deep into that mode, maybe stay away from philosophy, unless actually looking back now, I think orthodoxy would have helped a lot. But the philosophy that I was reading, it just made me more confused. Like, what is reality? You know what I mean? So I had to step away from it for a while.
No, I totally agree.
And lift weights as well, lifting weights and
yes,
going to the sauna.
We're all about lifting weights and eating meat.
Yes.
Church and Eternal logos.
Yeah.
So then describe this 2-year period post this Boga experience where you're again, you have a successful YouTube channel. You're able to make a living off this. You're not working. You are not using psychedelics for 2 years. How would you describe your spirituality during this? I mean, I assume, what are you still meditating? Are you doing nature walk? Like, how would you describe your spiritual interaction, your spiritual practices during this period where you're totally psychedelic, but you're not using psychedelics?
Yep. Okay. Totally. My spiritual path at that stage was a lot of meditation. Nature was a big for me. Sun, nature, and deep breath meditation. And spiritually speaking, that's when I moved more into Hermeticism, actually. And that helped me debunk the idea of you are God. So actually, I made a documentary a few years back. I think it's got like over 500,000 views now or something. Basically disproving and debunking the notion that you are God. But using Hermeticism, that's what's so crazy. It's like, it's not even using a Christian framework. And so that kind of helped ground me a lot. It's like a grounded spirituality in a lot of ways. It has its limits, of course, but it helped at that stage put some reality and groundedness and understanding, going deeper into polarity and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
Reconciling opposites. So a big part of my journey was just reconciling the darkness of life, basically.
Well, and I think one of the difficult points, even if you're using a Hermetic worldview, if you're using a Wattsian worldview, or even a Taoist worldview, is that the problem with some of these monistic frameworks is when you start engaging with good or evil, well, they have to balance each other out. So therefore, just like the yin and yang symbol itself, it's the black and white are equal to each other. One's not better than the other. Therefore, the bad is just as good as the good, and the good is just as bad as the bad. And you get into what I call monistic relativism, that it's relativistic in the sense that all you're doing is identifying two dialectics, or, a sort of a dualism, and then you're encapsulating that within a singular framework, like the yin and yang symbol. And that's what Hermeticism, in my mind, is also doing. It's just working within what's called a mentalistic framework. And that's the again, well, God is consciousness. God is all mind, in Hermeticism.
Right. The all, yeah.
Right. And so it is funny that you used Hermeticism to debunk the apotheosis of psychedelics.
Yeah.
But within that, but even within those paradigms, I think what leaves people still sort of lost, at least from my experience, because I was deeply into Hermeticism. I spent, in my master's degree, what I was interested for my 2 years was early Christianity, looking at Gnosticism, Hermeticism, the mystery religions, early Christianity, and then psychedelic shamanism. That's what I spent 2 years researching. So I was all about this stuff. But it provides you no basis for good and evil. It provides you no basis for right and wrong. Because, again, they're always relativistic. They always equal each other out. So really, it doesn't matter which decision you make. It's going to, like you said, it's going to be for the better.
Yeah. Different in degree, but same in nature. Something like that.
Now, I do have one person that wanted you to maybe give a little bit more teeth to your Bufo experience.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, because my psychedelic journey hasn't been over. This is my last. The Bufo experience was my last, like, psychedelic trip that I've had, like a big one.
Oh, well, we
I
can
think
get
I've had
to that. I didn't know where that was. Somebody was asking about for you to explain your Bufo experience.
This was early 2020, so this was
oh wow,
just over a year ago. Yeah.
Well, then we'll get to there, because from there, then I want to talk to you about Christ and all this different stuff. So,
all in good time, my young Padawan. Yes. We'll get into it.
So then this 2-year experience, you kind of lay off the psychedelic. You're making quite a bit of content. I'm sure you made lots of gains professionally with your YouTube channel, your skill set, making content, videography, documentary films.
That was more of my focus, photography, filmography, that's where most of my energy went into. So I just became obsessed with just learning the craft of photography, cinematography, writing, anything, all creative stuff, music production. So that kind of helped me a lot.
So then after that 2-year period, what psychedelics did you go back to? What did you end up getting back into?
It was LSD in the city of Uruguay.
Okay.
My friend, because I went to Uruguay, I made a documentary about the legalization of marijuana over there. So I was smoking a lot of cannabis, and I was smoking cannabis throughout this whole time, by the way.
All day, every day, or?
Pretty much. I used it I needed it. It was like a raft. If I didn't have it, I would have drowned, kind of thing.
That's how I felt. Even during my master's degree, I would smoke in the morning, I'd smoke in the afternoon, I'd smoke at night, and
all day, every day, before a workout, after a workout, before food, after food, before watching a movie,
yes,
during the movie, after the movie.
Yes, exactly. And you build all these excuses for it. Again, I at one point I want to talk about a recent video you made with your girlfriend talking about cannabis, because that hit home to me, and we'll kind of dive a little deeper. I haven't really talked about cannabis on this channel too much, so that'll be some new ground to cover. But
yeah, sweet, awesome.
But my problem back then, I was using cannabis again for everything, and just like you said, it's like a life raft. It's like you have an excuse because you can't do what you're doing without it, and you build these tolerance levels where you're so functionable that you're still so productive even with it, that you make, again, it's this terrible feedback loop, because you're like, well, I can't do it. Look at what I'm doing. I wouldn't be able to do all this without it. And again, we'll talk about that later. But so you go to Uruguay and you take LSD with a friend?
Yes, I had a quarter of a tab. So I did learn my lesson in not taking too much.
Oh, dude, I would go deep waters with LSD. That was my thing.
Yeah, I became more and more sensitive to psychedelics over time, to the point where even a 2-gram mushroom trip would be equivalent to a heroic dose for me. So it was very strange. But yeah, in Uruguay, I had a quarter of a tab of LSD, and one of my best friends, Felipe, he's like such a charismatic character, always laughing, like the best vibes ever. Like if you're gonna trip with someone, you're in good hands. So I was like, all right, I'll do it. Took a quarter tab of LSD, went through this whole journey in Montevideo, the capital city of Uruguay, gone through like this Lord of the Rings sort of journey, I guess. I felt like Frodo, my mate felt like Sam. And then he made me realize that Sam is actually the hero of the story, and if it wasn't for Sam,
then you wanted to be Sam.
yeah, he's like keeping Frodo in check. I'm Frodo because like I have like this crazy like chocolate addiction and stuff. Like, I need more chocolate, I need more food. Like I'm like the fiendish character, and then Felipe's like, dude, calm down, come on, come this way. Like, oh, thank you. Yeah, so we had this beautiful time. It was actually really, really awesome. It was like kind of a nice way to get reintroduced back into the world of psychedelics. And then I had another quarter tab of LSD a week later in Chile. And that's when I did my LSD trip simulation. And that went really well. And then after that, just every once in a while, I think I had like a small mushroom dose in nature with some friends. But ever since then, it hasn't really, apart from like, I did do a mushroom ceremony or two in a shamanic context in Australia. And then, but basically my last psychedelic retreat would have been early 2020. So I did ayahuasca again for a week.
In Peru?
Yeah. In the Amazon. Again, baby. Yeah, in the jungle.
How did that go?
It was, in the second ceremony, it was interesting because I went to that same place as my like really horrific, terrible one. Yep. But with my wits. So it was like I was there, but I was like, all right, Tom, don't freak out this time. Like, you can do it. And that's when I was getting to the point where it was getting so overwhelming that I actually called out to Jesus for the first time, because I've heard that before. I'm like, oh, but maybe when these dark entities come and you call out to Jesus, maybe that will help.
And did it?
But then the voice came back. No, because the voice came back and said, Jesus ain't going to save you here, pal. And I was like, oh, no. And then I kind of had to survive on my own. But I was actually talking to my friend Dakota about that. And I told him that, yeah, I called out for Jesus and he didn't come. And then he said, maybe he did come. It was just in a different way. Maybe it was just in a long road, because Christ definitely did come to me after that, for sure. Right. So it's weird. I don't know what to do about that, but
well,
yeah.
My gosh. Again, I don't want to get too derailed, but it's so true. Like again, the calling out. I've talked to multiple people, again, just privately, who have gone into these psychedelic states, and when they tried to use Jesus, when they got into these, it helped them in certain ways. But the consequences post-trip to somebody getting into such a sort of dynamic, intense, confusing state where they actually resort to this thing that they would never think they resort to, it has all this ripple effect once you're sober. It's the post-trip, and I've heard multiple people talk this way, and I find that just fascinating. Again, and we as Christians, we believe that God has abundant mercy on us, and I always tell people that you have to have a prayer life. That's one of the biggest things. I just did a stream on just reading prayers. Is I meet with young men. We'll do one-on-one sessions. They'll have all these questions. They want me to talk about apologetics, trying to intellectually convince them of all this Christian stuff, of Jesus. And we'll do that, and they'll like a lot of it. And then I'll ask them, are you praying? And they may identify as Christians. I ask them, are you praying? Are you praying every night? Are you praying regularly? Well, no, I don't really pray. So then it's like you want God to do everything for you. You're not willing to even just get down on your knees and talk as if the creator of the universe is real. Just that's all he's asking. It's really, it's like the humility. He's asking for such a small slice of humility, and he'll take it away from there. And it's so difficult for people to get to that place. And it's really, and I think it's also scary, because what if all this stuff is real? What if the spiritual warfare is real? What if Jesus Christ really is God incarnate, and that the logos and all this different stuff, what if all this stuff is real? I think that's almost more scary for some people. And that's why diving down into actually praying and trying to develop a relationship with Jesus Christ is actually really, really scary.
It is. I've just, recently been getting into that prayer life, and just, might as well try it out, see how it goes. But you're right. It is a terrifying realization that if this is true, man, there's a lot of change that needs to happen, right? And that's scary, because evil is, it's a very terrifying concept. If the spiritual warfare is real, then, it's kind of a heavy pill to swallow,
It really is. So then you said you're getting back to your journey, so then we can kind of bring all the way up to the present moment. This most recent ayahuasca trip, this was in 2020 in Peru. Mm-hmm. And so was this before lockdown? How the hell did you get to Peru?
Just before lockdown. Okay. I went back to Australia. After that, I went to Chile, actually, and their society is crumbling down. They're burning churches. Revelation, man. It's crazy.
I did
cops
see some of that.
Killing military, cops killing civilians, and it's gone through a very hardcore kind of an anarchy, anti-religion, kind of atheist movement, I guess. But anyway, neither here nor there, but that was just after that. I went back to Australia, and the lockdown was just about to begin. People already started wearing masks. I'm like, what's happening? What is this? What is this virus? So yeah, just got in there in the nick of time. Wow. But it was a powerful experience, because I know I talked about that scary experience, but I also went through it and it felt good at the end, you know. So it wasn't like a traumatizing one or anything like that. But during the time, it was very terrifying. I felt like I was battling for my soul that whole time, and I had to like stand my ground basically just to get through that ceremony. And then other ones I had were very positive. That's why ayahuasca is very polarizing, because some of the ceremonies are like truly some of the darkest stuff that you could imagine.
Right.
But then some of the trips are like so beautiful and amazing, and like this euphoria is incredible, you know. But yeah, I don't know. After that, I did Bufo though. That was my last like big trip. And that's where I went into what a lot of people call this non-dual state, I guess. Kind of going back to source, where you come from, where you're going, that kind of thing. Your whole ego. It was my true, like I thought I've had ego death before until I had this experience where it was like, okay, this is what it really is. Like really the shedding away of your whole identity, and you're just merging with source. But I didn't come out of that thinking that I was God, because I knew that I understood the distinctions of energy and essence, and I was thinking, okay, maybe I was participating in some energetical aspect, but I never came out of it thinking like, oh yeah, I'm God. In fact, I came out of that trip more grounded. I was like, oh, thank God I'm human, you know, and I just was really grateful to be back.
So how would you describe, because again, during this experience, you said you called out to Christ.
This was during my ayahuasca
right, so
trip.
The 2020, early 2020, before lockdown. And gave you a sense of self, I don't know, confidence in a sense, because you got through the dark place that you
I walked into hell. I literally walked into hell and walked out. And
so then, well, we have a whole theology for that. I won't get into that, but how would you describe then your return right before pandemic 2020? Like, where would you still consider yourself New Age? I mean, because apotheosis is a big one in regards to, you know, your idea of being God. So how would you just describe your spirituality then after this Peru experience, most recent one?
Yeah, I wasn't New Age. I was actually anti-New Age for a couple years. So I was into the psychedelic realm, and I was like, I guess trying my best to reconcile psychedelics with Christianity. So that was a big part of it. But in terms of the main New Age spirituality beliefs, I was actively against it. I was making videos about this like years ago. So it's like, again, the branding of my channel is like, it's super New Age, blah, blah, blah. But again, you look at the content, it's like, actually, no, this guy's really against New Age. So like I said, I made a documentary proving that you're not God, and that helped a lot of people see clearly. Like, shit, I actually fell into this.
So do you see yourself as like an Eastern mystic at this point? I mean,
I don't know, dude. I guess, I don't know. Maybe a Hermetist at that point.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I could call that. Might have been the closest, but something that my fiance told me is that she always saw me. She's like, dude, you're going to become a Christian. She called it years ago. So I guess in a sense, I was like, I was always living Christian values,
right?
But without knowing that it was Christianity.
Well, exactly. And
so I've always been about truth and right and wrong, and like, you know what I mean? Like justice, these kind of things. So,
dude, that objectivity is essential for the Christian paradigm. And again, you calling out to Jesus in that time of distress is really you reverting back to the things that you ultimately do believe in. Well, again, maybe you hadn't connected all the dots and strung all these beads together and how they all connected. But really, I mean, I think that's what a lot of us do, you know. And for me, the last psychedelic experience I had was an ayahuasca experience. If you guys want the full details, go over to davidpatrickharry.com, become a website member. But for me, I was getting into the Christian stuff at that point. I was thinking of myself as probably Christian, but a lot of people who aren't into the stuff that we're talking about, they just can't relate. It's like how deep you are into the psychedelic world and how much psychedelics then are associated with self-improvement, self-development, self-insight, all this different stuff. And so I went to this ayahuasca ceremony, and then I remember I took this book with me. I took The Ladder of Divine Ascent by St. John Climacus. This is talking about the ascetic ladder to get back to God in a Christian theological worldview. And it's all about morality.
Would you recommend that book?
Well, not. I mean, I do recommend the book, but it's more geared towards a monk and ascetic lifestyle. But there's so much to take from it, right? And so yeah. For me, I'm reading this on my way down there. I'm flying down to Southern California to do this stuff, and I'm reading this book by St. John Climacus, The Ladder of Divine Ascent, that I bought at one of the most beautiful Orthodox churches in America at Holy Virgin Cathedral in San Francisco. This is, again, talk about psychedelic. I mean, it's like a psychedelic experience just to enter into this church with all the colors, all the icons, the light coming through the glass. It's incredible. And so that's where it's like I saw myself as totally juxtaposed, standing with feet on opposite sides of the fence. Is that my heart, I had intellectually, I'm moving towards Christianity. It's beginning hard. I can't deny this logo stuff, like just the beauty of the complexity of the worldview. It's like, oh my gosh, something is going on here. And yet at the same time, it's like I'm being pulled back towards, well, you got, the psychedelics, the internal beauty, all these colors you see, all these experiences, the euphoria. When you get into these spots, sometimes you have these incredibly euphoric experiences. You're like, oh, I'm back here again. Oh yeah, right. I'm here again, and it's like a deja vu feeling as well. Yes. Like, oh, this is home almost. Like, yes, I've been here before. Yes, yeah, exactly. And so I was with a friend who was also getting a little bit closer to this Christian stuff, but he offered if I want to go to one of these secret ayahuasca ceremonies in California. So I went. And I'm not going to get into many of the details. Again, you can check that out the website. But my takeaway, what ayahuasca showed me, I didn't have a traumatic experience. I didn't have a lot of nasty experiences. It was like the ayahuasca, and I took as much as the shaman would give me. It was like the intoxication only lasted for me to realize Jesus Christ is God, that the privilege that I had was the fact that my grandparents and then my parents, because they lived their lives morally, it wasn't my skin color. It wasn't how little or more or much money they had or any type of material privilege. The privilege was that I was the product of 2 generations and probably generations before that. I just knew my grandparents and my parents of how honest they are as people, their integrity, the fact that, again, they may not know a bunch of this Christian theology stuff, but they actively try to live their lives in the best way possible. And this provided this fertile framework for me then to become this person and do all these different things. And this was the realization I had. That, and then Christ is King, Christ is God, Jesus Christ, all that stuff literally happened, and that it was time for me to build. And that Christ is a carpenter, and if I'm going to follow him, I have to start building. And so 2 months later, that's when I decided I have to go full-time with this Church of the Eternal Logos thing, and I've never done psychedelics since then. And I've been making Church of the Eternal Logos content full-time at least 3 times a week, ever since. And so wow, that was my last ayahuasca experience. That was my last psychedelic experience. And so I haven't had the call to do psychedelics again. That's not what now gets into me. Maybe we can even get into the video with you and your girlfriend. It's the cannabis. It's that is still a major temptation. For me, sex, again, just trying to be the best Orthodox Christian man I can. I'm trying to do that. I want to do that. God knows my heart and my intentions. Sex and lust. Because, again, all that stuff was freely available back then. You could have as much of it as you want. And then it's like I still have this piece of me where I long for that inebriation. I was never really big into drinking alcohol. But cannabis use is still a major temptation that I struggle with. Again, I talk to my spiritual father. I talk to my priest about all this stuff. And so that's the one that is still a temptation that I still sinfully have participated in since then, right? I know that. I talked to my priest about that. And then I watched you and your girlfriend's video on the cannabis addiction stuff. And I totally related about doing it way too, again, back in the day, doing it way too often. The anxiety, that eventually there's a sort of sense of anxiety. It's like, why am I high again? Why am I doing this activity high when deep down I know I can actually do it a little bit better? if I just don't do it? And then somebody tries to call you on, and you immediately go back to, no, I need, you immediately go back to that place where you were to defend it, that it helps you, that it pushes you in this right. But now you can see yourself doing it. And that's then the scary part, because now I'm beginning to gain a sense of self-awareness about all these habits and about these deeper instincts in myself that I would privilege and try to hold up. And now I'm just sensing who I am and who I want to be, and then the things in me that aren't necessarily bettering me or bringing me closer to God, or even bringing me closer to the goals I want in life.
Totally, man. I completely relate, and I'm not going to pretend like I've quit weed forever. No. And it's like I wish I can. I really do wish I can just get to that point where it's like, all right, never again.
Right.
But it's like this insidious kind of ninja addiction, it sneaks in there. And like you said, you can live your life actually just smoking all day, every day. You won't live your optimized life, but you can get away with it.
Right.
Whereas you can't do that with other substances. And yeah, man, weeds are definitely my biggest vice. Same with lust and sex and all that kind of stuff. I feel like they're interconnected. Like whatever the addiction is for lust, sex, whatever, is the same as my weed addiction. That's what I've come to realize. And yeah, I guess now, like, even, like I still fall into it, those old habits. And it sucks because, like, man, I thought I learned this lesson. Why am I still so weak that I can't even deny this impulse, But now I never bullcrap myself about it anymore. I don't tell myself like, oh no, but this is helping me. I never do that. Every time I'm high, I'm like, no, I'm getting high because I can't deal with my impulses. I'm doing it because I'm escaping.
Right.
It doesn't make it good or bad, but at least it's a starting point, like to really be upfront with yourself and why you're actually doing it.
Right.
So
no, dude, I'm totally with you. I know I will probably still smoke cannabis after this stream. And I talked to my spiritual father about all this stuff. It's like, it's this weird place where it's like, I'm not who I used to be. I don't need it. But I know that on a nice summer evening when I'm with certain people and it may be offered, am I strong enough to say, it's like in my heart, it's like I'm battling two versions of myself. The version who wants to be totally separated from it, and the version who wants to participate in all those euphoric experiences with your friends and the memories and the times and the insights and the dots connecting and yeah, it's like, again, now it feels like that's why I actually love orthodoxy, because it's so damn difficult, right? Because it's only made me become more self-conscious. It's only made me become a better man because I'm trying to be more like Christ. And that's, again, and my thing is not, I am not more righteous than anybody who watches this channel. And my goal, if anything, is just to be as honest as hell. And that may help somebody. That may help somebody out there. So
at least trying, being better than what you were yesterday, at least, pulling a Jordan Peterson.
So what spawned? Yeah. What spawned you and your girlfriend making your video on the cannabis addiction?
We quit weed for about, I think, 30 days at that point, or 60 days. No, it was longer than that. I think it was like 90 days, or like a really long time. And yeah, it was just time to make a video about it, just where we are on our journey. And, we've both struggled with this for a long time. And it's like, it kind of comes in cycles. I don't know. There's obviously something deep within my soul that's unresolved, that's kind of keeping me there. Because like I'll quit and I'll get to that stage where I'm like, oh, I'm over it. But then it kind of comes back. So yeah, I'm still in the middle of kind of struggling with this because it's so easy, and I don't do anything else. I don't drink alcohol. I don't do any other drugs. So it's like the one thing that it's like, I can just kind of relax and escape for a while, or, even read scripture while, smoking up. I know it's probably a sin, but I guess better to read scripture while stoned than not reading scripture.
That is probably true right there. That is absolutely probably true. But no, I relate. It's like, I don't, and I was talking to my priest about this, and I don't know, but it probably isn't good to talking about private confessions publicly, but just building that muscle, because I just feel, again, struggling with the lust and stuff, or the cannabis. I just haven't got the strength to know that I'll not do it again. You know, it's like I could say right now that, you know, I could go without the psychedelics. I could go without alcohol, but I can't promise, again, if I'm trying to be totally honest with my priest, my spiritual father, I can't promise that I won't do the cannabis again because of this. Again, I don't even want to make an excuse for it. It's just like a passion, because really it comes down to a passions, and that we have different inflamed passions. For me, it's the cannabis and lust are the big ones that I am trying my hardest to grab a hold of, right? And like you said, the cannabis stuff comes in cycles. Like you can go long periods without smoking or partaking at all, and then the perfect scenario arises, and then you go right back psychologically to the place, oh, wouldn't it be better if I was just? And then, since being Orthodox too, it's like all of a sudden you think that, and now it's presented to you. Now you have are you going to say yes or are you going to say no? And it's like this weird then battle, because it's like, especially after my chrismation, it's like all my passion, they keep being presented to me more. It's like, again, I don't know if God's divine providence, but it's like, again, are you going to finally make the right choice or not? You know, it's like, again, bringing me into all these situations where, so it's a real struggle. And so when I watched that video from you guys, I could totally relate about just the habitual behavior patterns surrounding it.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people can relate, especially long-term stoners, and that's what I find interesting of like the people who are the newbies at smoking weed and who are like ultra defensive about it. You can tell it's like, you haven't smoked weed enough. Just come back to me in a few years, and you're going to be saying exactly the same thing I'm saying right now, which you're yelling at me for. But yeah, it's just one of those ones. Again, you can get away with smoking for a very, very long time. It's not like, I feel like if, for example, if you were to get addicted to heroin or meth, you would hit rock bottom a lot quicker. Right. It wouldn't take you 5 years to be like, maybe smoking meth is bad. You know, it's like a no-brainer.
Right.
I don't want to say that about, because again, it's a bit of a sensitive topic, because I'm talking outside of a medical context, of course, because I'm sure, you know, they used cocaine for medical purposes.
And opium. I mean, opium is one of the longest using drugs in human history.
Exactly. So it's not about a good or bad, absolute good or bad. It's why you're doing it. And for me, if I'm being honest, same with yourself, it's a vice.
It's a vice. It's a passionate thing. It's not. Yeah. It's like it's. I'm totally clear from any delusion that this is making me be a better person. It's bringing me closer to God. It's giving me better insight. It's exactly. It's a passion. It's this weird relationship. I guess maybe it'd be true for an alcoholic or something. I don't know. But the difficult part is it's not as detrimental. And I think that's what's so difficult to navigate around all that is you can do it, and one, nobody will know in your life, you know, but you know, and God knows. And it's like that. I think that's what's so even more pernicious about the cannabis stuff is how low key it is. Even you're just doing it once in a while and all this different stuff. So,
and it's a natural plant for some reason that kind of makes us feel better about it.
Yeah,
I don't know why, but it's true. It's definitely a tough one to kick, and I've done most drugs under the planet, and this is the one that I've by far had the most addictive issues with.
Right.
And people get very upset at this.
Yeah, well, cannabis isn't addictive. Well, okay, it may not have physiological addiction, but it certainly is one of the stronger psychological.
Even that's not true. That's been debunked.
Oh, really?
Long term, it does produce physical dependence.
Really?
But even if that wasn't true, for the argument's sake, whether it's a mental addiction or a physical addiction, it's all interrelated anyway. So I don't think that's even important part of the discussion, whether it's a physical addiction or not.
Right.
It can be addictive for some people. That's all we're saying. It can be.
So now I want to get back to beginning of the pandemic, is what I like to call it.
Which has made the cannabis issue much more difficult, I might add, being home all the time. Because I'm used to traveling all the time, you know, like right. I like to get out there. But anyways, continue. I just like to make excuses for me smoking weed. Go on.
I'm curious for you to talk about then the development of a relationship with Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And when would this become public, or I guess maybe not public, but when would you identify as maybe going along on this journey?
Full on,
looking further into Christianity or just reading scripture. Like, when did you get your Orthodox study? Just describe then, once the pandemic started, Jesus. When did he step in?
It helped a lot, actually. This whole lockdown thing definitely made me rethink my life, because I'm like, again, I'm so used to traveling the world and going out and constantly getting out there, whereas this kind of forced me to stay home. And so what could I do but read and research and create and do what I can at home? And that's when the thing is, I can't tell you that it was like a one day aha moment, like, oh yes, Jesus is king. Like, it wasn't
right
from this powerful one experience. It was like a very long, slow process of the Christian theology unfolding itself. And it started with first realizing that things like pantheism and relativism is wrong, and you can prove this using logic and reason.
Yep.
So that helped me kind of eliminate a lot of these other different belief systems. And then I guess it was just a slow process of understanding the Christian theology, especially orthodoxy, like the distinction between essence and energy, or that it reconciled evil for me actually a lot, because I kind of got into this dualism framework, thinking that there is good and bad and good. But from what I understand of Orthodox theology, is that creation is inherently good and that evil is a privation. Like, it's not a thing in and of itself.
Right.
And so it's like good can live without evil, but evil cannot live without leeching of what is good.
Yes.
And then that helped me like really give me a grounding of, oh, okay, so this is actually fundamentally good. That changes everything.
Right.
And I saw this within my own life, like just looking back, like through the grace of God. And, just because you can get good out of bad, it doesn't mean that bad is good. It's just that through the grace of God, they can become, you can get a greater good out of it. And it was just piece by piece, man. Like I said, I can't tell you this exact thing that.
Sure. Well, I don't mean to make it sound like my ayahuasca experience brought me to Jesus Christ. That was not the case. Because agreeing with you, dude, because it took me a year before that ayahuasca experience of learning Orthodox theology, right? Because again, all this psychedelic stuff, and I tell people this who I talk with about, praying and all that. Jesus will meet you wherever you need to be met. And so for me, it's like it had to be this intellectual conversion, or there's no way I could have given my heart and then start the prayer life and then build the relationship that now it's like I'm so comfortable talking about Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. That was so awkward just to say out loud at the beginning.
For me, it would be awkward to say.
Right.
Like I could say it in private, during prayer,
right?
But I'm not so strong on that. But it's definitely moving there. It's just a slow.
Right. And so for me, the only thing that brought that process further is prayer, and that's what I try to tell people that I talk to. It's like I began. Mine was all about this concept of the logos. Like, again, because my entry into Orthodoxy and Christian, it was so abstract. Jesus, again, could have just been a symbol and I would have want to converted, because it was literally about, now I'm not believe that and I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to, frame where I was approaching it. It was so on the furthest outside of Orthodoxy you could get. Like, if Orthodoxy is the center, real Orthodoxy, I'm on the very edge, just trying to look at the worldview, see everything. And it just became so compelling that eventually, okay, this thing's really interesting. This whole thing of logos is really interesting. I'm going to pursue that. It took a year, basically, until I had an ayahuasca experience where basically is like, you don't need to do any of this stuff. You need, again, continue to follow the logos. You need to continue to follow Jesus. He is king and all this different stuff. And that's what set that course. So I'm totally with you. I have this, I just want to highlight for anybody listening. It's not like, bam, okay, now I'm a Christian. It was a journey. And so like you, it was a process. And it was a very slow process. But it was a very earnest process. I was serious that I wanted to know what was true because I've done all the psychedelics. Nobody can tempt me with that stuff because I've already been there. So tell me something I don't know.
Right. Like you went so deep into it that you were like publicly making videos and spreading these ideas. Like that's like next level, like for me too, you know, like that's how deep into it I was, that I wanted everyone to see what I was seeing, I guess. And, you know, because I would have to like think about this more and more and like really kind of write down the major kind of points or the major signs for me to go towards this path. But even part of it, one small part of it was seeing the resistance for Christianity. I felt like it's like the only religion that isn't accepted in the New Age ideology. And I was like, that's interesting. And then I looked at myself. I'm like, why do I have such an aversion for it? It makes like Christianity pisses me off the most of all the religions. At least it did. And then I looked, I kind of looked at it psychologically. I'm like, you know what? I have always had like a daddy issues and kind of rebelling against authority and teachers and cops. And like, that was just, and literally all my best friends have all come from like, some sort of a father issue. And then I was like, interesting that I naturally avert to these things. And that, in the Christian God, it's all about like, like this father figure, authority, rules, boundaries, right and wrong, boundaries,
submission.
Exactly. I was all about, even now, like, I was very much just a hedonist, basically, just chasing pleasure. And I still do chase pleasure a lot, but now I don't see it as a good, it's just basically a lack of impulse control, I guess. But yeah, basically the hedonism and direct experience was my God at the time. And then, I just started, this whole process was just a very long process of looking deep within myself and being honest and looking at the core foundations of the ideologies that I was buying into, like these Eastern religions, New Age, like actually researching it, not just parroting what I heard Terence McKenna say, but actually what is the history of this? Who were the founders? What did they believe in? And I think this is where Stephen Bankart's actually helped a lot in not so much in terms of my Christian kind of conversion, but it's more the debunking of the New Age. He's very, very good at that.
Yes.
And I had a chat with him. I invited him on my podcast, and he was the first Christian I invited on my channel. And people were very angry. I had one guy made a video saying that your mate Tom is anti-LGBT, he's a fascist, because I invited a Christian on. I was like, whoa. So this is already starting, and that just made me like see this hate towards this belief system. And I'm like, hang on a sec. So if I had the exact same belief systems, but invited a Muslim on, he wouldn't have made that video.
Nope.
So why is it Christianity? And then again, it just kind of made me question it more and more, and then just going deeper into the history. And then it was a long process because it was a lot. You had to debunk Christ consciousness, that Jesus was a mushroom. That was very easy to debunk. I'm surprised that even gets spread. There's a lot of lies.
It's sad.
Yeah, there's a proverb. I think it's like lies run around the world before truth even gets a chance to put on its boots.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So it spreads very quickly. And yeah, it was just a very, very slow process, man. Just learning, like you, Jay Dyer, reading the Orthodox Bible and seeing just how, just overall, there's more peace in my heart. I don't have any existential angst. I haven't had any for a long time. I might have some fears and I'm still human, not saying I don't suffer, but I don't, not on that level. No way. I just have way more peace and conviction in my heart and mind. And that's not that I'm still like in the middle of this process.
Right.
I still haven't even gone.
You're still in a journey. That's what everybody, again, this isn't an end point. This is a process, right? And even I'm in a process right now. I'm talking, that's why I'm trying to be so open about my shortcomings, is that I'm trying to do the best that I can. Like I literally, and that's what is so difficult about Orthodoxy. It's like now you get into it, and now you see how hard the spiritual life really is, how hard it is to actually be the best version of yourself is. And so just like me talking about how Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior, I can say this out loud. Dude, that took a long time. that took a long time. And according to scripture and theology, that is the Holy Spirit within myself. So the ability to recognize God is God slowly filling inside yourself, right? That you have to have the Spirit inside you to even recognize who Christ is. And so that is a process. That is a self-purifying process. That's what baptism and chrismation as the mysteries of the church is about, to try to give you that. So then when you go back into your world, you have that Spirit within inside you to then reanalyze your world. And now you can see it a little bit differently. And so I'm still on that process. This Church of the Eternal, whatever this YouTube channel is, it's part of this process. It's all a process. There is no endpoint. And in Orthodoxy, it's not like I can just make a confession of faith and say, hey, I'm a sinner and I believe Jesus Christ is my Lord and Savior. Now I get to go to heaven. No, that can be taken from me at any point. That can be taken from me tonight, tomorrow, because it is a continual process. And that's why we have the theology of theosis, that this whole inversion, the satanic inversion of all these world religions where you are God, is just this yearning within ourselves to be reunited with the essence of God. And instead of actually doing that process by trying to follow God incarnate and what he told us, well, I get to do whatever I want. And so we see this immense difference between how exactly you become God. Well, according to Orthodoxy, there's a set of rules. There's all these different things. If you do this stuff, if you engage in his energies, those energies, the only things that are uncreated, you can become more like him. And so as you were talking about evil as a privation, it's like, just like cold is the absence of heat.
Exactly.
Orthodoxy teaches that the energies is heat, right? So the absence of truth, which is an energy of God, that's falsehood, but falsehood doesn't exist out here. Falsehood is just the absence of God's energies, just as in cold is the absence of heat, which is an energetic process. You see, it's all energy.
We even use this like our language. Like I even said way before this, like when I went to the abyss, I felt like my connection to God was severed. And I was in the void, right? The nothingness, the meaninglessness. So yeah, it's very, very interesting that you say that.
So it's funny then, again, in Orthodoxy, it's like we take all these New Age yearnings and ideas that are kind of half-baked, no pun intended, but then it goes the full distance. Like once you encounter it, it just hits you like in your soul. And you see it, and you're like, and you may want to look away a little bit because, but eventually you can't get away from it. If you are genuinely looking for truth, that's why I made a whole video, is that Jesus Christ is the bottom of the rabbit hole. If you're genuinely looking for truth, no matter you're in the 9/11 conspiracy, whatever it is, Jesus Christ is the bottom of that rabbit hole. And it's just how far are you going to actually pursue truth? Because that's what he claims he is. And so if you're actually pursuing truth, no matter where your starting point is, I don't see how you can't end there. And it's just that so many of us, we're like fish in a lake that, again, the hook, the bait, whatever our passions are, is we go for the bait. And so we want to stay in our comfort zone, because to follow Christ, again, is to carry a cross. It's totally uncomfortable. It's like the peace, again, is an energy. So God's mercy and God's peace, those are energies. If we engage with God, we can have those things. Through the absence of God, again, those things are going to go away.
Yeah, I've seen it with, like myself, I've seen a lot of people who are like very earnest with their search for God, and a lot of them end up going toward these same conclusions. And I started seeing it over the years, again and again. I just didn't want to believe it. Again, I was still trying to reconcile these worldviews because I've like committed myself to it so much, It's hard to let go of.
Dude, it's very hard because you're letting go of, again, who you think you are. Dude, you're telling me I'm still in the process. You've just now been looking into it. Dude, I've been on this thing for about 3 years. And so wherever I'm at in front of you, I'm about 3 years into this thing. I'm still a mess. I'm still trying to work this thing out, right?
So I have a few years then.
Yeah. Don't be too hard on yourself. But It is such a process. But when did you
Yes.
begin to start reading scripture? Because for me, reading scripture and praying, it trumps all the intellectual. Now, for me, I needed the intellectual stuff to begin those activities in an honest way. But those
Yes.
two things really, really helped my journey.
Me too. Like like you said before, it's about if you follow the rabbit hole sincerely, you will eventually come to this conclusion if you're honest about yourself, and that's what I truly believe now. Because I see that a lot of people who get too stuck in the New Age, they're still in the Christ consciousness, Jesus is a mushroom paradigm.
Right.
Like if you can't even, you know what I mean? So it's like you can give them all the facts and logic that why this is false, but then they continue to believe it. It's like, whoa, that's strange. I thought that you guys were like genuine about the search for truth. And so, but yeah, I guess to answer your question, when I started reading scripture, it started with the Action Bible. I know it's like, I find it a laugh at, but it helped because it gave me illustrations and it was a way to kind of read the whole Bible in a short amount of time, just to kind of get the gist of it, I guess. And then after that, I started getting into the Orthodox Study Bible. And that was such a great help, man, because it's like, you read scripture and you're like, how do I interpret that? And it's like, oh, just look on the bottom of the page. This means that. It's like, whoa, it changes everything, man. You know, and it even gives you like, teaches you about the, theosis, Christology, and all that kind of stuff. And that's helped me. It's a big book, it's almost like 2,000 pages. So I like to reread passages
Absolutely.
a lot. Instead of like just reading the whole Bible all at once.
I've never done that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Just like I started with the Old Testament, and then what really blew my mind is reading the Orthodox Study Bible and reading the Old Testament with the lens of Christianity and seeing how it really is all a prophecy and a build up to the incarnation of Christ, and that just kind of blew my mind. Even in Genesis, the first passage. Not the first, but near the start of Genesis, it says, we made man in our image, so it's already implying plurality. And how do you explain that until the New Testament comes along? It's like, it was just mind blowing. And especially seeing the symbolism, Christian symbolism, and how a lot of pop culture uses it. And we take Christianity for granted, excuse me. Yeah, I feel like a lot of people in our society take it for granted. I'm sorry, I got a bit of something stuck in my throat.
All good.
But yeah, man, I just started just getting deeper into it, reading the stories over and over. Something that really helped me was the Matthew Peugeot's book. It was like Cosmic Symbolism of Genesis or something like that. Have you heard of that one?
I've not read it. I have heard of it.
Yeah, so that one really, I read that one about maybe a month or two ago, and that one kind of gave me a whole new lens on reading Genesis. It's like mind blowing. It's like a fractal pattern that repeats itself throughout all of Scripture and human history.
Dude,
it's like
exactly, just the and that's what again. I fall in love with orthodoxy. This whole psychedelic worldview of fractals, sacred geometry, Fibonacci, pi, phi, sacred ratio, sacred space. Okay, great. So you guys all believe in that stuff. Now, do you have a metaphysics for any of it? Oh no, you don't. Okay, well, so how exactly do you guys believe? Well, we as followers of the logo, all that stuff, we have an objective order it comes from. That is the logos, as Plato talked about, is the source of all archetypes. Whether you're getting into Jordan Peterson, you're getting into Jung, you're getting into narrative literary archetypes, or you're getting into literal physical archetypes of creation itself. We have an entire worldview to account for all this stuff. And so it's like, as somebody who was New Age and loved all that stuff, and well, you don't have to give it up. That's part of our theology. It's part of the revelation. And it's like, oh, why didn't anybody tell me this?
It has it all, and it really does reconcile a lot of the extreme viewpoints, like even like non-duality, for example, is really just an extreme form of polarization of just attaching yourself to one aspect of reality and denying the rest. It's probably a very crude explanation of it, but anyways, And then there's the materialist paradigm, just looking at matter as the only thing that exists and there is no God. And I feel like orthodoxy really is the reconciliation of these dialectics. And there was a lot of problems which I had, like the problem of evil, man. I wrestled with that for years, like really understanding, like, is evil a thing? Like, is there evil within good? Is it really a yin and yang situation? I can't believe that. Then what would be the point of doing good if everything's just going to balance out? And so orthodoxy gave me a very clear explanation of the nature of evil in a way that I haven't heard of anything else,
right,
in any other theology. Same with the energy and essence distinction. I think it's very mind-blowing.
Hey, 1 second. Looks like we're having audio issues. Let me switch this real quick. Looks like we were able to fix it a minute ago. And so...
Excuse my squeaky chair, everybody.
Okay, so how are we doing now? Okay, now it's good. See,
Sweet.
At least we didn't have to create a new Zoom chat. I figured if I just go to the speaker output, if I change it and leave it there for a second and then turn it back to the multi-output device, we're good to go. Sweet. So we are good to go. Sorry about that, brother. I didn't mean to.
No. All good, brother.
Yeah, so that's what just the reconcile of good and evil, the idea of energies. Again, once you understand how, can I, a big one, even this is a contention within Christian theology itself. Can you actually engage with God? Do you engage with what's called an analogia, an analogy of God? Is love an analogy of who God is? Or do you actually engage with God's love? Well, orthodoxy says you actually engage with God's love because that's an uncreated energy. And the only way, again, you can become like God is by engaging in that directly more and more. And that's how, by essence, our created essence can come more and more like his uncreated essence. It's only by his uncreated energies, because the energies synergize us to make us more like. It's like, wow, that makes so much sense. You could explain that to an unsophisticated person, and they, oh, well, yeah, isn't that kind of like how cold and hot is? Like, yes, exactly. It's like creation itself reflects the revelation of Jesus Christ.
100%. And I feel like when you explain it in a certain way, people are a lot more receptive than what I thought there would be. Like I'm talking to old YouTube buddies who are like deep into the new age, and I'm like very honest and talking about where I'm at with orthodoxy, and they even said like, hey, actually, you're the first person I've ever heard talk about this stuff who's actually saying it in this palatable, digestive way that makes sense without sounding too much of a Jesus freak or something,
right. That's exactly.
And that's why, that's why you don't start off. That's why you don't start off straight away off the gates. Like, if you don't believe in Jesus, you're going to die in hell. Like, as true or false as that is, that's not going to it's going to repel people away from it. I was for a long time.
Me too.
And there's a lot of evangelicals which go way too far, and they're kind of a turnoff to Christianity. And then that kind of made me, I read Seraphim Rose's book, Orthodoxy and a Religion of the Future, and how there you go. Brilliant. I'm going to reread that one. But that book really blew my mind in terms of learning about the infiltration of dark forces within Christianity. And of course, it makes sense. Like, for argument's sake, let's say Christianity is the true religion. Then of course it would make sense that the enemy would attack that. That would be the main target. And you just look around within history, and it's been the most twisted religion of all time, to the point where you can say Jesus was a mushroom, and that will actually be taken seriously.
Right.
Like, I don't hear that Buddha was a cactus, or Muhammad was a LSD tab, or you don't hear any of this kind of stuff.
Right. And in
why
fact,
Christianity?
The world is generally more accepting of all those people being historical figures, except Jesus Christ. Right. Except
Jesus Christ, yeah. And there's more historical evidence that Jesus existed as a person walking on earth than there is Buddha. That's for sure.
Anybody in the actual age.
Yep. So yeah. It's like a lot of people's, from what I realized and why I was so against Christianity, and the people who I talked to who were so against Christianity, they were against a false representation of Christianity. And then once I started learning that, I wanted to get to the core. Like, what is true Christianity? Is it like, I went to Gnosticism for a while. That's when I was in my Hermetic phase. I actually bought the Gospel of Thomas. I read the Gospel of Thomas before I read the Bible. I haven't read the Quran before I read the Bible.
Oh yeah, I got all the Gnostic Gospels.
Wow. That's why, like anyone listening, you got to understand that Christianity really is like the last stop. I tried
Me too.
all of it.
Literally, I tried it. That
All of it.
orthodoxy was, and I was studying religion, brother. Like that's what my undergraduate, my master's, my PhD is literally in religious studies. I could say more about any religion except this one part of Christianity called Eastern Orthodoxy. I wasn't too sure about that. I mean, and so it was literally as like I felt like I had exacerbated all options. And I loved when you were talking about how, of course, the evil one would want to destroy the one true church, the one true faith, and all this different. And really, when I look at the history of Christendom, you know, Christ promised to, bound Satan for 1,000 years. Well, the Great Schism happens in 1054, 1,000 years later. And what happens? Well, the Catholic Church splits from the Eastern Orthodox Church. And what do we have? The formation of the papacy. We have a man claiming to be the vicar of Christ. Well, in the Eastern Orthodox Church, Jesus Christ is the top of our church. Right here, the priest of priests. We don't have a vicar. There is no vicar. Everybody's a bishop subservient to Jesus Christ. But in the West, all of a sudden you get this new theology. Well, he's infallible. Oh, so a man that isn't Jesus Christ also doesn't commit sin when he speaks ex cathedra. Wow, you see how it starts to invert. And then
that was the main point which got me away from that, actually. I was like, no, men are pretty fallible.
Right.
You know?
And Orthodoxy is so open about that, even with our bishops, because if you look at the history of Orthodoxy, I mean, like literally the idea of Jesus being fully God and fully man was a minority opinion going into the first council. And we can point to a single individual, Saint Athanasius, to stand up at the council and proclaim and debate and philosophically justify, theologically justify, no, he has to be fully God and fully man. Even though Arius, the quoter of Scripture, had a large following, 60% of the Orthodox Church was more leaning towards Arianism. I mean, think about it. And yet one man at a council who absolutely got up exoterically and spoke truth as tensely and as clearly as he could, changed the opinions of people. And now even these evangelicals who you're talking about, they don't know anything about church history. They still believe Jesus Christ is fully God, fully man. And we can point to a single individual who saved that. And so when you look at the history of the church, St. John Chrysostom, one of our greatest saints, was excommunicated, died outside the church because he criticized the emperor's wife for building a statue of herself in front of Hagia Sophia. St. Maximus the Confessor, he got both his hands cut off and his tongue cut out because he was speaking against heresy that was being pushed by the bishops in the Orthodox Church. Died outside the church. He's one of our great. He's my favorite saint. If it wasn't reading Maximus the Confessor and his concepts of the logos and the logi, I mean, this stuff blew my mind when I first read it. I was like, how do I not know who Saint Maximus the Confessor is? And then you look into his, and then it's like, what the heck? I didn't even know. Again, like this has to be the one true church. How the hell do they have this theology intact in 2021? It's still intact. We can still talk about icons. You know, the iconoclasts want to do away with. How the heck? And Christ said, they won't prevail against the church. And so then we look at all the other churches and we see now the globalism, you know, the affiliation with the Rothschilds, global banking, the global homo agenda. It's becoming more and more clear. And so when you look at Christendom, you know, 1517, now we get the Protestant Reformation. Total break then of Christianity from any sort of apostolic association. So now Christianity in its most popular form is totally divorced from anything the apostles did. They have no connection back to the original church. And then from there, it just continues to fracture.
Oh, yeah. Especially with Protestant, right? You got like, more than 20,000 denominations. So that one was easy to kind of put away. And then there was something about Catholicism. I'm like, I went to a stage where I was like, maybe this is the true church. It's at least closer to the core doctrines than what most Protestant churches preach. That's how I felt at the time anyway. But there was still something, I'm like, I don't know, man. There's something dark. There's something kind of like gothic and kind of satanic almost. Like there's some, like, look at the Pope. I'm not a conspiracy theorist or anything, but it's like I look at that, I'm like, I don't know. I have a bad feeling about that.
Yep.
You know, I just always, it didn't sit right with me, and I guess I was right all along. So luckily, I didn't go back to that. I went deeper. Again, just following the breadcrumbs. Like where does this go? You know, actually studying the history and the logic. And I think that's, you know, like you said, Christ appears to people in different ways. And I think because I'm a very rational, logical person, so I need to understand this intellectually. I need to be able to explain this for me to like buy into it completely. Well,
you know, and one of the things that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but just hearing your story, it's like, I always, again, one of the biggest motifs of Christ and his healing is that he heals the blind. He, again, one of the blind men in Scripture, we're told, was born without eyeballs. He spit in the dirt, rubbed it in his eyes, and gave him literally new eyeballs. So as you've engaged in more logic, as you've engaged in more authentic love, as you've engaged in more authentic humility, again, your eyes, you can literally see more. You can, and you can't give that to somebody. You can't explain it to somebody. It's literally, and so we talk about phenomenology and like basing your worldview on your experience. That's totally experiential between you and God. That's the only two people that know like how you see it, the journey to see it, and what you will see in the future.
Wow. That's so true, man. Because I've been even looking at that, like my eyes have been becoming more open, and then you start to see the patterns. Like, and it's like grounded in reality. Like, you know, it's consistent, it's coherent. And that, like, as a rational person, it's like, it's a nice peace of mind, you know, to have something that doesn't completely contradict itself, you know. And because a lot of my old philosophies and beliefs were built on quicksand, and they were very easily refuted. If only I had someone like you to come tell me, hey, Tom, actually, I could prove this. This is why this couldn't work. You know, I wish I had someone to kind of push me in that direction. And I guess that's what YouTube is for, and it did eventually happen. But yeah.
So, you know, I even wonder myself sometimes when I think about that. It's like, would I even have listened? Like, say somebody, that's even true. When I, like, they tried to save me when I was 27, 28, would I have even listened? And I probably wouldn't have, because of how self-gratifying the whole process of what I was doing was. The whole idea that I had secret knowledge. And this is one of the one things, again, I love about Orthodoxy compared to all these other world religions. We don't have any sort of esotericism. That is a heresy. You cannot be, or supposed to be, again, it still happens, but a Freemason or any type of Masonic or secret society, because Christ calls us, as he called the apostles, to speak truth as exoterically and as publicly and as loud and as forcefully as we can. That it is a sin for us to hold truth in a secret way, because the way we save the world is to confess who he is. And so you have to do that exoterically, where then you look at all these other world religions, or you look at all these different secret societies, you look at Western esotericism, the history of magic itself is all about secret knowledge, because if I have secret knowledge, then I'm at a status that you aren't. And this is the basis of Luciferian theology. Luciferian theology is that Lucifer is the light bringer. The bringer is the secret gnosis, the secret knowledge of which now I have the light and you don't have the light. So Luciferianism is based on the presupposition that not everybody can have the light, or we can't even have the thing that we're trying to build. That only certain people can have the light. So now you get under the understanding of the Illuminati and all these secret, because it has to be selected. And so then again, what is Scripture? Well, the evil one works in secrecy. The evil one works in darkness. Truth wants to be shown out in the sun. It wants to be seen.
100%. I don't know if you heard of this gentleman called Mark Passio. I remember learning that's when I was into my phase of like, oh my God, the New Age really is satanic. You can prove it in a lot of ways.
Right.
And yeah, this guy was talking about, he was like a satanic priest, and he was talking about all this stuff that you're talking about. and they want the new age to get spread.
Yes.
That even the founder of the Satanic Church or Church of Satan, I forgot his name, Anton LaVey, I think, somewhere around that. But he said that basically people practicing new age are just Satanists without the devil, and that we as Satanists should reclaim these new age practices.
Right.
Right. So this is the founder of the Church of Satan saying this stuff. So that's why even I'm at that stage now where I would prefer, I would prefer a Satanist over a New Ager, because at least a Satanist knows who he serves.
Exactly.
Well, to a certain degree, but yeah.
Exactly. No, I'm totally with you, man.
Whereas the New Age, it's like insidious, because it's all like love, compassion, blah blah blah. Like this kind of over naivety in a sense. Like, I don't believe in evil. Everything is good. The universe is on my side. No matter what happens. It's all for the good. Just got to follow those good vibes, baby, and that's it.
Right, which is totally hedonism again. And so is your emotions an uncreated energy of God? Should we navigate the world of creation through? Of course, Scripture says no. Don't do that. Right, that the evil one manipulates you through fear and emotion. And then you look at COVID, you look at the pandemic, you look at what we're in. The spiritual warfare, it becomes so obvious. It's in your face. And then you can get to a place where you can actually have some compassion for the people who are irritating, that are wearing their masks, that are scared to death, that are trying to force you. It's like, one, they're still annoying as hell, but it's like they're, unfortunately, again, it's just they don't have the strength, because they don't have the energies, literally the energy of God in them to resist it. They literally don't. And so it's like, again, if we're going to be like Christ, we should pray for them. We should, we shouldn't. And that's the hardest thing for me, because I'm so prideful, right? I mean, because anybody who's reading or trying to better, there is a sense of self-pride, but then when you encounter people who are so in the opposite direction, it frustrates you, you demean. I do this all the time. I was talking with Father Deacon Dr. Ananias about, we're totally open here in Indiana. Only Marion County and then the county of Fort Wayne still has masks, but some people are still buying it. But when I see a man in the county that I live in who's my age, and we don't have to wear masks, and they're still wearing masks, yeah, it's like I say things under my breath. What an idiot, like, what a pussy, all these different things. I say that, and then I catch myself like, well, that's not helping anything. Because again, if I believe what I believe, why am I angry at him? I should have mercy. I should have compassion for him, because he doesn't even know where he's going.
Right.
Literally, spiritually.
Why am I getting triggered? Right. What is this arising out of? Putting it back on.
It probably is a sense of self-pride, right? That I can see. Again, back to that esoteric. I see something you don't see. You idiot. You want to slap him around a little bit.
New Age is a lot about that. It's like an ego trip, spiritual ego, and it ends up just accelerating the growth of pride over time. That's what that's the pattern that I've noticed of people who go all in the New Age. Eventually, they'll come out more confused and more prideful and more into their ego. It's like, ironically, but it's very common. Ask anyone who's been in it long enough. Right. I'm sure they'll admit it if they have some self-awareness. And I think, even another problem which I see is like that. And I was very much into Carl Jung. Like, that was like Jordan Peterson, Carl Jung. Yep. And I was like all about integrating the shadow, right? Integrating Satan in a sense. But then there's a certain limit where I couldn't go further into it, because it's like, all right, you should probably integrate and face your traumas, things that happen in your life, like your personal and human emotional stuff. But then, I mean, are you really going to integrate all of evil? Like all the worst parts of you? Like, are you going to integrate the pedophile within you?
Yeah,
are you
exactly.
going to integrate the serial killer in you?
Are you going to do that?
Exactly. And that's the thing with logic. It's like, yes, I'm using an extreme example, but the logic should still stand the same.
Right.
So that's why I like to use a lot of like extreme examples, and it doesn't hold up. So then where do you go with that?
Yeah.
I don't know. You tell me.
Hey, I'm still working things out too, man. I don't have all the answers. Again, if you have to go, we can hop off here. We've already been talking for about 2 hours, but
That's all good. I got some more. Got some more time.
One of the things that I wanted to mention that you brought up was the sort of surrendering to the ayahuasca and the ego death. And this is something, this is another dot that I've kind of put together more recently in regards to how does orthodoxy deal with the concept of the ego? Because, and so orthodoxy has, I would, in my opinion, a much more of a middle path regarding this ego thing, because it's not about destroying it. It's not about annihilating your sense of self to the point, again, now you are the cosmic self. Now who I am, again, and we mentioned before the scenes, Connor Murphy, right? And so Connor Murphy, again, has been, I don't know if he's still, but using microdosing ayahuasca every 2 hours for at least 2 months. And so
that is insane. Not recommended, people. Not recommended.
Absolutely not. And so you can see then the psychosis that he's in, where he's literally living out his trip because he's just his body is so flooded with it. Like
it's a mania. Like you can see it.
You can see
it's very clear. He's pretty much, like, I think you even said it, he's the embodiment of Leo Guru's teachings.
Yes.
Which is funny, like how Leo calls him, is like, hey, you shouldn't do this. And like, hey, hang on a sec. From your worldview, you're not allowed to use the word should. You know,
right?
And he's saying, yeah. So it's just, I feel like deep down he's like upset because I feel like Connor Murphy's actually more congruent and consistent with his worldview.
Then that's where that's where you almost have to give him credit, because even though from on the out, especially as an Orthodox Christian, now I feel like I see somebody who's spiritually possessed, because literally every boundary that we would establish as an Orthodox Christian, he continues to transgress. You know, drinking another man's semen, sleeping with another man, you know, drinking his own urine, eating his own feces.
Like, it feels like he's trolling, but then it's like, but you're still doing it.
Literally
like,
doing it.
Yeah. He's committed. That's major commitment.
Exactly. That's where you have to give him credit. Again, just like the Leo Guru. It's like he fully believes it, but that's why, again, for me as an Orthodox Christian, looking back, and one of that appreciative that I've had about God, it's like, how did I, again, with how much I took, how frequently I did it. Again, I didn't do microdose every 2 hours for 2 months, but how was I rescued? How was I not brought to these pits? Because when I'm looking at the patterns now, it just seems so consistent that this is a sort of demonic possession. This is everything that we would talk about. He's embodying, he's exemplifying for everybody on a public level. And then this idea of ego death, because that's what he's been caught up on now, right? Is he keeps talking about how Connor Murphy's dead. When did Connor Murphy? Because his psychosis and his illusion, as he says multiple times, he is Jesus Christ. He's going to prove to everybody he's just like Jesus Christ, because Jesus faked his death, and then he resurrected by showing everybody that he wasn't dead. And so Connor Murphy, again, he says all this stuff all the time, that he's going to do the same thing. And so this is all based on this idea that you have to kill who you think you are, so then you can become God. This is what he's getting from Jesus Christ. Well, Jesus was just a human, and then he faked his death, and now he's actually God. He killed this ego. Well, in Orthodox theology, the ego can definitely be a problem, right? I mean, that's what pride is. That's what your ego is used for every sin. But again, but also to have repentance is to use your ego. To exemplify humility is an egoic what else is being humbled? It's the egoic structure of your psychology. It's who you perceive. It's the mode of vehicle that you are in the world. And so what is being deified? Well, it's not some God spirit that I am and you are. No, it's David, Patrick, Harry. It's God. Again, we believe that every single person is so unique, made in the image of God, that is what's going to be deified through theosis. It's your unrepeatable person. And so orthodoxy then is about preserving and purifying the person, because our theology begins with person, operations, essence, as opposed to making essentialist claims like everybody else does. So ours begins with a personal relationship, which is, again, just like how we're getting to know each other. We've gone back and forth in DMs. This is our first time having a conversation. Well, how do I know you? How do you know me? Through my energies, things I say, things I do, how I move my hands, my tonation. These are all energetic processes where we know God through his energies. And that's why we build a personal relationship with God through the energies. Just like I'm building a personal relationship with you through my energies, and you vice versa. And so,
exactly. Go on. Just what you're saying, there's a lot of nuance in this theology, and that's why I really enjoy it. And there's just too many logical contradictions when, like, especially if you're talking about like non-duality, because on one hand, everything's an illusion, but then you are God, and then everything is God. But then what's the distinction between an illusion and truth? There really isn't, right?
Right.
And it's just, it was very disheartening seeing Leo go into like the psychedelic realm, and he was just straight. I think he did like 5-MeO DMT for 30 days straight or something ridiculous, and that's his proof. I even remember going into a comment discussion with him, and it all like I was using my logic of why you cannot be God using Hermeticism, and at the end he just said, "Go and do psychedelics and then come back to me." Like that was his ultimate. Aha! I got you. Go do psychedelics. You obviously haven't smoked the bufo toad. You don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, and I did smoke the bufo toad eventually.
Well, tell us about your bufo, because we didn't even get into that. We skipped right over that. That's
true. It's. I don't like to use the cop out like, oh, it was inexplainable and ineffable, but real. You've done DMT.
Yep.
You've done like these psychedelics, and a lot of it's like really difficult to describe in words. 5-MeO DMT is like that times a million. Like it really is beyond conception, and like a true ego death, like a true eternal, almost feels like you're just living in eternity, but you're merged with this loving presence. But not that I was it was just more that my soul went home. And I even had this sense of like these angelic, like high dimensional beings kind of like saying, hey man, it's all good. Like they're kind of like family or something. It's all like feeling, and it wasn't like super visual like DMT is. It was a bit of visuals. Like I guess the way I describe it is like a really bright white light with like a soft overlay of fractals over it. And it was just eternal love. It's all good. I still had some existential grief in my heart, I guess. And that kind of shattered away, and I came back to it like almost like reborn, like it was the first time being in a human body. And it was so intense. It was really the most, like experientially and emotionally, it was definitely the most intense and profound experience of my life. But luckily, I didn't let it get to my head. I saw it as because direct experience was no longer my king. And I know that I can get deceived, so I kind of had a detachment from it a little while. I even waited a whole year before even speaking about my experience, just in case it changed over time.
So
it was profound, though. I cried, and I was like, I understand. That was my first words that I bawling my eyes out. Like, I understand.
What is the understanding?
From that state, I understood that it's all good, basically. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can go deeper into it, but it was more of like an overwhelming peace. Like, even after death, there's no, it continues. This isn't it. But also overwhelming gratitude that this human life you should be grateful for it. And we're here for a reason,
Absolutely, man. I can't disagree with that. Go ahead.
But even my mindset was kind of, it was already being shaped by Christianity at that point, just not into orthodoxy,
right?
But at least I was listening to like Jordan Peterson. I think for a lot of people kind of opened the gates to that world.
Yep.
And so I'm sure I would have, after learning and researching all this theology, that I'm sure it would have affected my groundedness of me going into this experience. Because I didn't lose myself after that. It was just, okay, that was a cool experience. Awesome. I'm done. See you later. Sayonara. Good way to end the psychedelic experience. So then people can't say like, oh, you just left because you had a horrible trip. Nope. My last one was the best one I ever had. So it was the opposite.
So how do you plan on doing it again? I mean, you said your last psychedelic experience. Where's your
first big one? I think I had like a small mushroom trip, maybe like one, like kind of like a micro
Gotcha.
small dose kind of thing.
Right.
Now in terms of heavy doses, I'm pretty sure I'm done. I just don't feel like I don't feel the need for it.
Yeah,
I think maybe
that was the transformation inside myself. It was the need for it isn't there because what I try to get out of it, I can't get out of it anymore. The only thing I can get out of it is a sensual pleasure. Again, maybe getting back into that high state that as you're talking about the sort of deja vu, you're like, I'm back. That kind of peak window that maybe lasts for an hour, hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, and it's like that's the window you want to do everything. I remember again in that video you were talking with your soon-to-be wife.
Yes, that's right.
If I could only see this mountain set, this mountain range, or go do this activity, or see this forest. But to me, that's the only pull now. It's like the very sensual, visceral. That sort of passionate window into all that stuff. Because to get the deep insights about God or myself or what I should do next in my life, I'm not going to get it there if I just pray earnestly. It's like that tends to work out much better. And
long term too, right?
Yeah, long term,
it's
and it may
sustainable.
It may not be as exhilarating. It may not have this sense of adventure. It may not give me the sense. I mean, to a degree, it is, but that's kind of the appeal to again all the drugs and going into the forest and taking the. And it's like, oh, I'm getting ready to go again. A trip. You're getting ready to go on an adventure, and things are starting.
The visual candy, the euphoria. It is amazing. Of course, I understand why people are very attracted to that.
Right.
For sure. But it's been like right now. I'm like, will I say I'm never going to touch psychedelics for the rest of my life? I can't. I don't want to say an absolute yes or no, but what I can say is that I don't feel the need to. I don't need it anymore. Right. I can say that, and I don't. If I do it, it's not going to be out of some spiritual search or some healing, because it gets to the point where like a lot of people get into ayahuasca. I don't know about all, but a lot of people, it's because they're at a low point in their life. Maybe they need some healing that needs to be done. But then once the healing is done, why do you need to go back? Because a medicine implies that you're sick,
right?
And like, do we just need this crutch for the rest of our lives? Some people go that far. Like, there are a lot of people I've met throughout this journey that will just do the ayahuasca, that one retreat, and then it's like, yep, I got what I needed. I'm going to continue living my life. And those are the people who actually do end up getting the benefits from this kind of stuff. But then there are those who do it for life. They think that they constantly need this healing, like they need it.
Or they think of themselves as a wizard or a magician. Again, these are another ego inflation practice. Again, I was guilty.
Or that psychedelics are they give you an accelerated growth.
Yeah.
Like it does speed up spiritual growth. And I think most psychonauts who are deep into it would probably agree with that psychedelics accelerate your spiritual growth. I wouldn't go that far. Maybe, I don't know. What do you think of this?
In regards to psychedelics as
can
a tool,
it? Yes.
I think
can it accelerate your spiritual growth?
I mean, I'm sure it can. For me, did it accelerate my spiritual growth? It was certainly a catalyst towards the person I am today.
Good answer.
Huh?
Yeah, good answer. It kind of summed it up really nicely.
So this was a recent conversation I was having with somebody, I think it was in a one-on-one about psychedelics and can they be used? I mean, could they ever be used in a good way because of some of the medical research coming out in regards to MDMA, psilocybin, PTSD, near-death experiences, all this different stuff. And when I look over the literature, it's like for some people who have deep, the psychedelics dissolve boundaries. Terrence McKenna was right. The problem with our society is that Satanism is trying to dissolve boundaries because the father, as a father inside of a home, as a father inside of a church, as a father in regards to the Trinity, it's about order. It's about structure, because every good thing has to have some sort of structure to it. And that's not a dissolution of boundaries. And so as we look at society with transgenderism, with, you know, the dissolution of national boundaries, just every cognitive boundary you can think of, there's an active effort in society in the Western world to dissolve it. And for some people, though, that maybe have a sort of cognitive boundary around a traumatic experience, maybe the dissolution of boundaries in the right context, in the right scenario, could be helpful for them. But as a lifelong practice, I don't see it being helpful, because, like you said, if they are tools for healing in some sort, again, and I see Christ as the ultimate healer, that's his function. He is the physician of creation. Then maybe those psychedelics are useful in particular scenarios where people are deeply in a pit. Maybe they're about to kill themselves or something, and they need a radical transformation in psychology to see the world in a different perspective. But when I look at the culture now as an Orthodox Christian, when I look at people in the New Age, in psychedelics, talking about their trips, all I can see is the Orthodox term for prelest. It's demonic delusion. It's just, they can't base anything in philosophical justification. There is no rootedness to anything they're talking about. It's just self-worship. It's hedonism. And it just leads people to addiction. When I look back right now at all the people that are in that psychedelic sphere, that I know that they're in the same place they were. Again, my life has been a continual transformative process. I think, could be an egotistical comment, but I think it's because I was trying to pursue truth. And so my life was always I was always transforming. The last one probably more reluctantly, giving up everything, becoming an Orthodox Christian. That's probably the most reluctant transformation.
I'm still very reluctant towards this whole process, but it's like, well, it's taken me where it's taken me, so I gotta be honest about it. You know?
Right? Exactly.
Do you mind if I just go to the bathroom?
Yeah, go ahead, man.
Is that cool? Yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can read some super chats real quick. Don't worry about it, bro.
All right, sweet, bro. I'll be back.
Okay, so for super chats, while Tom's taking the hitting the restroom real quick, Thomas G throw in $3. Thank you very much, Thomas G, for the super chat. He said, "Did your interview with Jay Dyer help with any?" Okay, this is directed towards Tom. With any religious / spiritual questions? He said that it did. What do you think of Orthodoxy, especially in comparison with Catholicism and Protestantism, as Orthodoxy seems to be less well known about in the West? Well, again, I think the first super chat, again, we can have Tom answer this specifically if you guys want, but Thomas G, I think this super chat was answered already. So, but thank you, brother, and I can bring that up to him. I watched YouTube super chat at $5 and said, please tell. Well, I guess I'll wait for that one too. Here's one that doesn't involve Tom. Jane Sophia donated $25. Thank you so much, Jane Sophia. She says, great stream. Loved hearing Tom's journey to Christ. Just sub to his channel. Your streams are always informative with the best chat room. Well, thank you so much, Jane Sophia. Glad that you're here, and I really appreciate the kind words in regard to the community. We were getting ready to, what we were talking about right before your bathroom break was psychedelics, their potential usefulness, and how, looking at the medical literature, it seems like it could help somebody in a deep psychological pit. But just looking at the culture and how they're being used, it's just at a large scale perspective. When you zoom out, outside of my own anecdotal experiences, it seems like it just continues to lead people towards sin, towards inversion of society. Right. It's an inversion.
It's about zooming out, like you said. It's like Bitcoin. You know, you can't just look at the day chart. You got to zoom out and see what where it's going.
Really, seriously.
I don't know if that could be a terrible analogy, but you know what I mean.
Right. So So that's kind of my feeling. But again, like you, I am not going to make a public statement that I will or will not ever do anything again, because from experience, that is the quickest way to be presented with that thing in your life, and you're gonna fail the test. So
yeah, I know.
So
it's like my weed story.
So I'm just going to repent, pray, and try to pursue this path that I'm on, because I'm still journeying. I was only brought into the Orthodox Church officially in November 1st of 2020. So it hadn't even been a full year. Now, I was a catechumen for over a year, and I was already an inquirer reading about theology a year and a half, 2 years before that. So 2018 was the beginning of my Orthodox journey, per se. The beginning of 2018. But
I went to an Orthodox church like not too long ago.
Oh, you did? Tell us about that experience.
But I didn't go inside because there was a waiting on at the time.
No.
So maybe it was some resistance, right, in the city. And then we went again. My friend told me that there's an English speaking sermon in this Orthodox church, and then I went there, and it was inside a university or something. And I think me and my girlfriend were just bitched out. We're like, "Oh, are we even allowed in here? Because we're not students. Can we just walk in?" So we kind of like just bitched them. We're like, "Oh, okay, we'll save it for another time." So it's funny, like we'll even go out of our way to go into church, and then something will happen, and it's like maybe it's not the time. So something weird going on there,
dude. No, it's orthodoxy. I'm telling you, it's like these synchronicities. You know that we like to talk about Jungian synchronicities. Well, and again, in Christianity, we just call those providence. That's just providential experiences. So Christian theology has a term for synchronicities. Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when you encounter a synchronicity, this is also considered God's providence. So it's a providential experience. So we can still, again, as the New Age, use these synchronistic experiences. Because again, in a way, especially once you start your prayer life, that's what I try to tell these young guys. Once you begin that active prayer life, and then you're trying to pursue this stuff, it's like these synchronicity, the providential experiences occur because it's like, now you know, it's only you and God know that you said this or that, and now it's like here, and you're like looking around, and you almost have a smirk on your face because you're like, oh, my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah, man. I know. Like, and you know, I've seen like videos and pictures of like the Orthodox Church, and it looks absolutely amazing. Like, so beautiful, very colorful. And like when you go to a Greek Orthodox church, is it like all in Greek? I'm assuming.
Well,
like,
it depends on the parish. So some churches, like here in the U.S., you can go to a Greek Orthodox church. They may be in all Greek. Some of them are. Some of them are only parts of it. Some the homily, which is what we call the sermon, where the priest gives a message on the Bible reading of that day. The homilies in English. Now you can go to a Russian church. Like I can go to a Russian church and it's all in Church Slavonic or Russian. Or I can go to a church like my church is an Antiochian church. It's all in English. I can go to the Romanian Orthodox Church of America. It's all in English with Romanian. So it totally depends on the parish because they're going to cater to the majority of the people in the parish. And so Orthodoxy does not have any problem using the vernacular of the people to worship God. You know, like that's why the Catholics used to only do it in Latin. That was before Vatican II, I believe. So, yeah, so you can go to, usually, so here in America, the Greek church tends to be the most liberal, along with the Orthodox Church of America. The Russian churches tend to be the most based. Antiochian tends to be pretty...
Also, the Russians.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, the Russians are based.
The Russians, the Serbians, the Romanians, the Bulgarians. So any of the Eastern Bloc countries tend to be pretty based in their orthodoxy because it's been taken from them. And at the same time, orthodoxy has been in their countries for over 1,000 years, that they have an identity and a tradition with that we really can't understand as Westerners because we have no tradition. We don't have much of anything. And again, that's why our societies are so feminized. We don't have any patriarchal tradition to hold on to. your Protestant
No.
Christianity, your female pastor up there that's teaching you about the Bible, which also tells that she can't be a pastor. Are you talking about that church?
Hmm. It's interesting because I was like looking at all these churches as well, and all of them are available to me. I live in Melbourne, and there's like at least 30 Orthodox churches
Oh.
around the city. There's heaps. I have a whole buffet to choose from:
wow,
Serbian,
dude.
Russian, like 5 different Greek Orthodox churches.
Wow.
All of it. So there's a lot of options.
You are,
yeah,
dude. You are lucky. I do not even have close to that many options here in
Really?
Indianapolis. No, I have like 6 options, but if I want a base parish, really maybe like 2 or 3 options.
right.
So
That's why I got to continue searching. Actually, go into these churches.
you and your girlfriend should just just read scripture again, learn deeper, but just visit churches. Like make this like a 6-month thing. Is that when you can, you're going to go to a liturgy, because it's a little daunting when you first go in, because you first walk into a church, everybody's crossing themselves, everybody's bowing all the time, and you kind of feel like you're obviously a sore thumb. Anybody in there knows that this is your first time there,
Yeah,
So
100%.
it can be a little overwhelming when you enter into an Orthodox church. It was for me. The first one I entered into was a Russian church, and everybody was speaking Russian. I was dressed to the nine in a full suit. They had a sweater on, with jeans on, and they're looking at me, and I didn't walk in and cross me. I hadn't been in an Orthodox. I've read theology. I never went to a church.
Yeah.
And
It's weird. Yeah, you do feel like uncomfortable. Like, oh, I don't know about this.
Right. No. And so it's a real hurdle, and that's like, again, it's like getting over. And that's a sort of humility, because you are going to look ridiculous when you go in there, And if it's a good parish, they're going to swoop you up, and they're going to start, because they want to share the faith with you. Because again, they see you as, oh my gosh, wait, you actually you have an Orthodox study Bible? Oh my, come on.
Yeah. I hope so. That's what I'm hoping for. That it would be like that.
It's a good parish, and then that's you'll find bad parishes. You'll find parishes that you'll go in there and they'll look at you and just kind of turn their head, and you're like, oh.
Look at this non-Russian Australian. yeah.
So,
but because we're looking for a Orthodox priest to marry us, like that's actually like a journey.
Fine.
And so like my family's already like, why not Catholic? Unfortunately, there's no Spanish Orthodox church. That would be much easier. As far as I'm aware, there are no Spanish-speaking Orthodox churches, are there?
No, there are. I mean, it may be.
Are there?
It may not be a national church, right? So there's plenty of churches like in South America. It's the Serbian Orthodox Church, and their services are in Spanish.
In South America, they got Serbian.
Yeah, South. I'm sure of it, right? Because there's Orthodox, there's Russian, again, just like in America, they'll use the vernacular, so they'll be what's called their jurisdiction. So these different countries are what's called their jurisdiction. Their jurisdiction may be Serbian, whatever, and then they build a church in Nicaragua. But again, I'm just making that up. But they will do liturgy unless they have a significant Serbian community there. Then it'll be in Serbian. If not, if everybody's there Spanish, they're not going to do it in Serbian. Nobody's going to understand what's going on. There's no point. They're not going to get converts that way. So they'll do it in the local vernacular. But in regards to getting married in an Orthodox church, this is one of my dreams, because I guarantee you, within all those churches, dude, and that's why you got to go to them. You're literally going to have the hair on the back of your neck stand up when you enter into one and see the beauty and see the icons, the life-size icons that are full humans, painted the size of actual humans, and they're looking at you. And in the service of orthodoxy, in Western marriages, what's the whole big point of the marriage is to put the ring on the finger, right? So you exchange vows, and that's only half of the Orthodox wedding. The other half of the wedding is literally you getting crowns, a king's crown and a queen's crown, and they're put onto you, and you guys marry each other, or the priest marries you. That this is the restoration of creation. You are now fulfilling what Adam and Eve were not. And you're doing it in the presence of God. And so this is a martyrdom, because now as a man, you are taking the vow that you will die before her, that this is a sort of martyrdom. And so it's like, it's so much deeper. It's like, if you just watch an Orthodox wedding, the beauty, the tradition, the meaning, again, once you understand what's going on, it's way more than just exchanging rings and then everybody's going to the after party to drink. It's like, like for me, I will invest when I get married. I will invest to have the most beautiful, Orthodox wedding I can have, and then whatever. I don't really care about the after, because I want to have a real ceremony. I want to be married in the presence of God inside an Orthodox church, and so
do it right.
Yes, yeah, because again, I want one marriage for the rest of my life. I want to die old with somebody. Like, I want to make the commitment. They got to be the right person. But I want it, and so I highly, highly recommend going and visiting of the different Orthodox churches and meeting with the priests, because to get married in the Orthodox church, you will have to become Orthodox.
Yes, I know.
Okay,
so that's why it's a big deal.
Yeah, it is a big deal, because
that's why I don't take this lightly either. And I even the concept of marriage. It's why I've waited for so long. That's why I don't understand people who get married so quickly, and that you don't even know what you're getting yourself into. It's a very profound bond, and especially you're doing it in the eyes of God. It's like heavy stuff. You got to really make sure you're in it for the right reasons, and you know what you're signing up for. And we're in the middle of this process. It's hard right now. We're in lockdown, so now everything's shut again, and we just went. Yeah, so as soon as this is over, we're in the middle of this process.
Just take it to God, pray on it. He'll you will have the craziest. You'll meet your priest in the grocery aisle grabbing noodles at the same time, and your hands touch. I don't know. It's literally nuts, dude. Like,
wow.
Like just pray on. Just give the wedding to God. Like, literally tell him your intention. I know you probably already done this. I'm not telling you anything, and just give it to him. And let him lead it and put it together. And it'll be great, man. God bless you guys. And the fact that you found the person that you want, it's like, you don't want to play games. If God is real, make that commitment to her in front of him, in front of eternity, in front of eternity.
So it's powerful. Like, give me goosebumps. Like, thinking about it. Like, man, what am I getting myself into? It's too late. Can I leave?
Fast forward, we see the stream where you're back in Peru.
I marry Mother Ayahuasca. Yeah, it's like
Grandma Ayahuasca.
But it's cool. Like, being like, this girl's like really cool, and she's been with me through thick and thin on my darkest periods and all these different phases. And the fact that it's all kind of, I feel like it's just coming back home. That's really what it is. It's not even this, like, it is revelatory, and a lot of this stuff is new to me, but it's like, but none of this information is new. Like you're saying, it's like, it goes back to thousands of years ago. It's like, none of this information is new. And it's like, I feel like I'm rediscovering, remembering. That's the phase. That's how I feel like the process is.
Right.
It's like a feeling of a process of going back home, and so this is unfolding the way it was always meant to.
Brother, I'm excited for you, man. I'm excited for you to begin entering Orthodox churches, because that's when you're going to get the sense of like your home. It's a weird, again, the phenomenological dimension. It's like, again, Orthodoxy can give you that. So they can also give you, again, what you love the best about the New Age and the psychedelics. So I'm just so excited for you guys, man.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
God bless you guys.
And, and I feel like, I'm sure you've talked about this before, but I feel like Orthodoxy kind of ticks the boxes of all levels, like in terms of like intellectually, it kind of satisfies you that way, emotionally, spiritually, physically. It just reconciles everything in this perfect pattern that's like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Right.
This is what I've been missing, And I'm still in the early stages, but it's like, again, it's been a long process, but it just seems to be the way things are unfolding. So
Well, glory to God, man. Glory to God. I mean, how many people are going to be affected by, again, your journey? You know, your journey is so powerful.
I think it's a bit heavier for me. It's because of how much I've influenced people going into the psychedelic realm, this new age. So there's a lot of like guilt and kind of anger at myself for falling into this crap. And again, I don't want to put a blanket of it. Just all psychedelics is bad in every single context. Like I don't have that belief, but for spirituality, that's when things can get a bit dicey. And I was influencing a lot of people from like just ignorance, I guess, you know, not really just parroting what I heard Terence McKenna say, but without really taking the time to unpack it and see if it holds up in reality.
Right.
But reality was subjective in my worldview, so I guess it didn't really matter.
Right. Well, we have some super chats here that are directed towards you. The first one's for $3, or the one that I'm going to read first, at least, because it just popped up, and I think it's poignant in what we're talking about. Good buddy Jimmy, Orthodox gentleman here in the community, says, Tom, is Yesenia, did I pronounce that right? Yesenia?
Yesenia
into Orthodoxy. Yeah. What are her views on Orthodoxy, and again, maybe your own Christian journey?
Well, it hasn't gone deep into Orthodox theology per se, but she agrees with basically my views about Christianity, which is Orthodoxy. So I said to her, because she's like, oh, I'm Catholic. I'm like, do you believe that the Pope is infallible in his knowledge and everything he says is the word of God? No? Well, you're not Catholic. Welcome to the Orthodox Church. Things like that. Like just those fundamental distinctions of like people think, yeah, I'm Catholic. But then when you actually go for the jugular on their fundamental belief system, it's like, no, you're not.
Right.
You know,
it's so
unless you believe, again, because you have to believe that the Pope is infallible, right? For you to be a
or again,
Catholic.
the whole
That's
Catholic.
how I understand it.
Yeah, the whole Catholic theology, all the announcements, ex cathedra, that all has to be intact, or you're not Catholic. And so if you reject that, so what are you holding on to? Well, it's tradition, it's family. Okay. So you mean basically the things, again, it's all present in Orthodoxy. Don't you want to be a part of the church that never changed? You know, that's what I want to be a part of. And, you know, that's what I'm excited to have discovered. So
she's 100% open to it, and she's really happy that I'm like getting deeper and deeper into it. And she has very Christian values anyways. You know, she cooks and cleans and takes care of me, thinks a man should be a man, and she wants, you know, like, it's beautiful. I love it.
God, it sounds like you got yourself a good one, bud.
Thank you. It hasn't been an easy journey, just want to say it, but
women
we got there in the end. No. And she's Spanish as well, so they're a bit crazy. Very crazy. I was being nice.
Yeah, that will get you.
But that's where the passion comes from, right?
Yeah.
The yin and the yang, I guess.
But that's great. Again, that the traditional Christian roles, you know, like you are called, again, from an Orthodox Christian worldview, you are called to be the spiritual leader. You're called to lead her spiritually, financially, and physically. That's the way it's supposed to be. And so
100%.
It sounds like you guys are well on your way to a long and happy marriage, God willing.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
So another super chat was from Thomas G. He donated $3, and he said, did your interview with Jay Dyer, and you kind of hit on this in regards to Orthodoxy versus Catholicism and Protestantism, but he wanted to know, did your interview with Jay Dyer help with any of your religious or spiritual questions?
I'm not so sure about the interview per se, if it changed me in this profound way. I guess it just kind of reconfirmed things that I was learning from Jay Dyer anyway, because I was like watching hundreds of hours of his stuff before interviewing him. So it wasn't like me interviewing him. I was coming across all this information for the first time, sort of thing.
Right.
And I also was much more careful at that stage not to make it all about Christianity. You know, I kind of just wanted to, again, start off with the basis of at least debunking atheism, helping people realize that it's absurd, and just things like that, you know, and lead into Christianity, I guess. And I'm still in the middle of this process, and it's like kind of scary to be very vocal about this stuff, but I know it's inevitable. It's in my heart. It's just what I have to do, but it's a bit scary because it's a lot of resistance and persecution sort of thing, you know. Like I already got a hate video made on me because I interviewed a Christian. Right. Imagine once I start speaking about it from my heart, like,
brother, it's gonna happen. It's inevitable, you know. And again, as an archetype, as a symbolic archetype, you like Jung, you like Peterson. I mean, Christ, if he is the truth, is again symbolically demonstrating that the truth is always persecuted. The truth is always to be killed by those who are threatened by it. And so if you're going to follow Christ, you're going to be attacked in a similar fashion. As he says, you know, you'll be attacked, you know, just for following me in my name, just as I was.
Yeah. And this is a truth that I'm accepting more and more over time. And it is difficult, but at the same time, it's like, I couldn't do anything else, you know? Right. It's like,
Dude, and your journey's just starting. I mean, it's still, you're embarking on a new horizon that you have no idea. I mean, your future, you're entering into, you're 29. You know, you're literally on the precipice of a new decade of marriage, of religion, of perspective, of life, of masculinity and being a man, and how, again, then your role in society, because your function is going to change. The way God's going to use you is going to change. And so it's like you're on the frontier of just immense change in your life.
Yeah, and it's also funny because originally my intention for this channel was really just to be an open book about my spiritual journey. So in some sense, nothing has really changed, except that this is a very difficult pill to swallow and to share with the world, especially when it's particularly disdained against.
Right. Next super chat was from I Watch YouTube. Well, I'm glad that you do and glad that you're here. Thank you very much, brother. He threw in
YouTube.
He threw in $5 and said, "Please tell the guy to read." That is Tom. The Gurus, the Young Man, and Elder Paisios. At some point, I have not read that, but I have also heard that is a good book. The Gurus.
What's it called?
It's called The Gurus, the Young Man. And Elder Paisios.
All right.
Elder Paisios is a more recent saint. And it's like people knew he was going to be a saint while he was still alive. Again, I obviously don't know a whole lot about him, but he has quite a few prophecies. People would come to him and he would know quite a bit about them. He had a sense of clairvoyance or foreknowledge. And so people knew this guy was very, very holy, Elder Paisios. And so that book is about the Gurus, the Young Man, and Elder Paisios. I think it's about a group of people or people encountering him and sharing their stories. I'm not totally positive, but there are tons of firsthand encounters dealing with Elder Paisios and what they claim that he knew what they were going to tell them. He already knew the sins they were struggling with and all this different stuff.
All right, I guess I'll have to write it down.
There's a lot of supernatural in Orthodoxy as well. You'll see myrrh streaming icons, healings. I mean, just at my church, there was a woman on dialysis that was praying, and all of a sudden, it was just healed. She was again receiving communion and all this stuff. She was going to have surgery and all this, and it just turned around, and. If you start talking to people again in these Orthodox parishes, it is really wild. Like something's going on here with the miracles. There are, it's not uncommon to be privy to or even experience miracles. So again, that's going to push the frontier of again your acceptable world within. So again, I understand it did the same to me, man. I was like, all right, well, I can get into deductive arguments for why logos theology is superior to monism and dualism. But you're telling me that an icon over in Hawaii is streaming myrrh of the Theotokos? I don't know. I'll have to see it myself. But
is that similar to like the Virgin Mary sightings like all over South America?
No, because these are filmed. Like if you go online, you'll see people with filming the icon, and myrrh is coming out of it. It's wild stuff. I am still trying to process everything as well, dude. It's
okay. I've seen some crazy stuff in the psychedelic world. So I'm not as close to these
Right, exactly. You're not, well,
experiences.
Supernatural things.
You know, I had a shaman, like, this is sober in broad daylight, by the way. I've got this film, I haven't put it out yet, but she sucked on my neck and then pulled out a fishbone. Weird stuff.
Wow. I gotta fix this audio thing again. 1 second. Okay. Audio should be good.
All good?
Yeah, we should be good now. Okay. Next super chat. Here. Okay. Aggregate device.
Oh, hang on, you just go on mute?
Yeah, that was what was working earlier.
Okay.
So I was hoping that's what's working now. Yep, it's good. Sweet. I'm so glad I figured out how to do this without kicking you off Zoom. It still needs to be worked out. I don't know what the hell's going on. Anyways.
Is it a Zoom thing? Anyways,
it's something to do with the plugin that I'm using to filter, because I'm on an iMac, to get desktop audio into my Streamlabs stream. It works easier on PC, right. but the desktop audio, so like before I'd have to move my mic to the speaker when I do interviews and stuff so people could hear, because there's only one input.
Yep.
Well, okay. You have to get a plug-in on Mac so the speaker and the desktop output will be filtered into Streamlabs, so when people are watching it, it's like they're hearing it, through the. And for some reason, the plug-in keeps getting scratchy after an hour, and you turn into a robot. And people then they start complaining. I don't know. So now at least I figured out if I mute it, if I change the plug, leave it there for 5 seconds, then change it back, looks like we're all good in the hood. So I got to figure it out. I don't know. Maybe I'll start doing it when I'm talking so it doesn't disrupt the guest and it never happens. Anyways, I'm rambling. The next super chat is from Jack Gregory. Thank you very much, brother. Gentlemen, we just had a one-on-one, so please tell everybody how wonderful that was. He threw in $10, kidding. Lucifer being the god of this age, able to change appearance and alter our perception, could this explain the vast accounts of, quote, light beings encountered through ayahuasca and DMT? Are these beings the, quote, fallen gods, subtly deceiving us within the spiritual realms? If you want to take a stab at that first, or
it's a lot to get in there. I think I want to give a yes or no answer, but I do suspect that a lot of these quote unquote light beings are masquerading, and you shouldn't trust an entity just because it gives you good feelings or just because it's made of light. There's a lot of deception in nature. There are flowers that look pretty, and if you touch it, it kills you. So that mechanism is within nature in and of itself. So it would make sense that it would be like that in the spiritual dimension. Now, to know what's good or bad, ultimately, is it all demonic? I don't know. I don't have these answers. I'm still trying to reconcile all this stuff. But for sure, there is deception. And you can see it in certain people's lives who go really deep into it. They listen to an entity to do something. And then you see over time, they just end up being more confused, serving unknown principles and not really understanding what they're really getting themselves into.
Right.
What do you think?
For me to tackle that question, it's like, for me, even based on my own anecdotal personal experience, I never encountered a whole lot of entities. My psychedelic experience, LSD, taking 6 grams of psilocybin mushrooms, turning off all the lights, putting a towel over my head, trying to get in silent darkness. Sure, I see colors and sacred geometric structures and fractals. No gnomes, no elves, no little people, no leprechauns. So I don't know how to account for any of that. Now, go
ahead. It's just because the more I question this over time, even within my psychedelic experience, the less of those experiences I tended to have. The more critical I was of entities, the less they started to appear. And even if they did appear, one of my last ayahuasca ceremonies, even though I was deep into the psychedelic world, I was still aware of pre-lest, maybe not the orthodox term for it, but I was aware that there are delusional, false spiritual experiences and you shouldn't trust everything. It's just common sense. It works with humans, plants, animals. Why would you remove that in the spiritual realm? And I had an entity come up to me and I remember being, nope, you do not have permission to enter my body. And it's kind of stood back there and went away. So I don't know.
Interesting.
At the start of my journey, when I was more open to it, that's when it would come within my field of awareness, I guess. But then the more I started questioning it, started to become more critical, they started going away. And that is the same for people who maybe, I've had UFO experiences too, sober ones, actually seeing UFOs, but I never bought into it. I was like, oh, cool, that was an awesome experience. What the hell was that? But I didn't start to go deep into UFOology or whatever
right.
It is. But it's like a lot of people who, it's like if they start questioning even the UFO experiences. I had a mate who's really deep into this stuff and had a lot of experiences. And then as soon as he started to question, are they good or are they just pretending to be good? Just that one little thought, then they started to, he didn't see them as often. And so I feel like it's very similar with the psychedelic realm, UFOs.
Yeah,
who knows?
I wonder if my absolute...
It's very suspect, that's for sure. That's all I'll say. It's very suspect.
No, that's so interesting because for me sort of being critical to the point that that's what I was looking for. I'm trying to move there, and I'll take as much as I can to, that to get, and it just never came. I don't know what to make of it. But I do think the consistent inversion and where people get at in their own spiritual lives getting into the psychedelics, I think it absolutely opens you up to possession. I absolutely think that it can be demonic. I absolutely think that you can encounter demons that can possess you and change your behavior patterns, change your personality, change your direction in life. But does it happen every single time? Well, no, I don't think so because it didn't happen to me every single time. Am I lucky? When you make a debate, you're never supposed to make it based on personal experience. That's a fallacy. So, I can't say. I don't know. My experiences didn't have a whole lot of demonic encounters, didn't have a whole lot of entities, but from a aerial view 10,000 feet up, clearly this isn't moving people towards Christ on a regular basis. Unless, as we've talked about before we started and we highlighted here, the multiple gentlemen and women that have messaged me that are now into Orthodoxy or Christianity, all of them were just avid seekers of truth. They were readers. They were, just consumers of information to try to find what's true. And it's like those people, somehow they got into it and then they got out of it. Where I look back and, the majority of people that I know that are into it are still into it. So that's the best we can do, Jack Gregory. I hope that sufficed.
One more thing I want to add,
go ahead.
or ask you, what do you think about, because you said it doesn't regularly take people to Christ, but then what about those experiences that do bring people to Christ?
Right.
Where they could even give credit to their entire Christian faith to that one psychedelic trip. And if they were inherently demonic and all evil 100% of the time, then why would it do that? Even if it's just one person, or even if it's a low percentage, the fact that can happen, that throws a wrench in it for me, that it's all, it probably mostly is, at the very least, maybe, I don't know. But the fact that can happen, that kind of it throws me off a little bit.
So
then hang on a sec. If this is so antichrist and demonic, then why does it bring people to Christ? And it has a few people that I know.
So I get your point, and I could even have personal experience, as I said, with my ayahuasca experience. I had last time I did LSD was while I was really deep into all this logo stuff before I identified as a Christian. And it was connected. A lot of the stuff I talk about in regards to the New Age and Christianity and Orthodoxy and the inverse, all that stuff hit me in an LSD trip one time. And that's where I wanted to pursue the logos further, follow the logos. But just because Christ saves people or meets people where they're at, he also went to Hades. So Christ doesn't have boundaries. Does that mean Hades is good and bad? Well, no. Does Christ meet people in prison, people that committed murders, and so
right, that doesn't make murder good or
right.
Prison
So I think the question is tricky because good things have happened from psychedelics too. People have had personal experience. They broke addictions. A Boga is a good one with opium addiction. So it's like, for me, that's why I try to always tell people nuance. That whenever instead of, I like to talk about generalizations, but when it gets to specific things, it's like, once you start getting into nuance and stuff, it's like, well, yeah, that and that. So as a general rule of thumb, I don't think they're going to bring people closer to Christ's revelation. Can they have positive effects on people? Yes. Did I have psychedelic experience that had a positive effect on where I'm at now? Yes. Was that the only way that would move me to where I'm at now? Possibly so. If Christ didn't meet me in that LSD experience or that ayahuasca trip, would I be able to have the conviction to make the change and the life change and give up the old YouTube channel and do this new? I probably wouldn't have, because I'd said, well, yeah, I read all this stuff when I'm sober, but when I'm high over here on ayahuasca or LSD, I don't. But he met me there and here when I'm sober. So it's like, well, geez, maybe he just knows so much more than I do that he just meets me where I have to be met to continue to follow him.
It's so personal.
It is. That's what it's so different. That's why it's so nuanced. It's hard to talk about on a general level.
It is. Psychedelics are tricky, man. We don't even understand consciousness, let alone psychedelics. It's like so weird. It's strange. And then there are like different psychedelics which are already different. Like a mushroom is different to ayahuasca, which is different to San Pedro, to LSD. They have a lot of overlapping, but there's also almost like personalities within these plants or something. I don't know.
Right. No, I definitely.
But I feel like plants have their own agenda. That's for sure.
I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised. So it is a tricky conversation. But as a general rule of thumb, I don't advise them anymore. General rule of thumb.
Right.
If you've never done them, if you don't have psychological problems, if you're not in deep depression, read scripture, pray. Again, if you're going to do them, pray about it for a month solid. Go talk to your, don't make it some secretive process that you're going to hide from your, well, I don't care what they say.
Exactly.
That's not the way to go. Especially if you've never, it's just, you're dealing with a different beast if you've never done all that stuff.
Oh yeah. You don't want to mess with psychedelics. Anyone will tell you that. Even the people who are the deepest into it will tell you don't mess with this stuff.
It's not a game at all. You better be able to ride the bull. If you can't, you're gonna get gored.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna see things that you never thought were possible. It's like it brings you to the highest highs and the lowest lows that are even possible in this normal human state of consciousness. So it could be like the worst experience of your life, or it could be the best one. But then you can't judge best or worst based on that one experience. You got to realize, you got to, again, zoom out and look at the pattern of where your life is going and be honest about it.
Right.
Where is it taking you? Is it shaping your philosophy?
Right.
How is it shaping your philosophy?
Right. And those are that self-awareness that I think it prevents it's like a weird, because it gives you a sense of self-awareness, but also it affects your psychology and your perception and your ideology so much that it blinds you from a sense of self-awareness as well.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
Next super chat was by Jane Sophia. She donated $25 and said, "Great stream. Loved hearing Tom's journey to Christ. Just subbed to his channel. Your streams are always informative with the best chat room." Well, thank you so much, Jane Sophia. Truly appreciate the contribution and you being here. Thank you very much. Allison Jennifer, one of our good Ortho sisters. She's an Inquirer. She's a new Inquirer in Orthodoxy, 30-some years in the New Age. And so she's a hell of a woman. She's making the transition. Very cool. Allison Jennifer super chatted $2 and said, psychedelics fed my ego. The Bible feeds my soul.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That is a really good one-liner.
Because to be honest, the most arrogant and prideful people that I know are the ones who are like fully 100% into psychedelics. Right. Like the one who really, I don't want to name names, but it's kind of scary. It was almost like when I first got into psychedelics, it was like, oh my God, it's like everyone who does psychedelics, it's like it just makes you open and aware and loving and self. I just assumed this because that's the effect it had on me. But then I went out into the real world and actually started engaging with the psychedelic community. And then I realized that actually a lot of these people are just deluded, lost. And I don't mean that with judgment. I'm with true empathy, but it's like you got to see it for what it is. And that's where I ended up. And there's like the level of ego of thinking that you know the truth is very prevalent, especially when you've gone deep into it, especially when you do like the bigger doses. Like it's funny how doing a really high dose of psychedelics kills your ego, but then ironically it ends up making the biggest ego, especially when you've gone really deep. Yep. And there's always that, you don't know mushrooms till you've done a heroic dose. Right. And then you do a heroic dose and it's like, you don't know mushroom, you don't know psychedelics until you smoke the bufo toad, right? And then you smoke the bufo toad and I'm sure there's always going to be something else, a more powerful psychedelic, which is the true one that will show you, the absolute truth.
It's the spiritual one-upmanship. Instead of, it's the psychedelic virtue signal.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Exactly.
It's the public display of my spirituality, right? Again, it happens in Orthodoxy. It happens all over. You'll get the Orthodox that like to publicly display their righteousness, that, I'm so unworthy publicly, all this different stuff. But it's the same thing as the progressive virtue signaler, the Orthodox virtue signaler, or the psychedelic virtue. It's a public exclamation of how higher or lower, or again, where you are compared to other people.
Oh yeah, and when people start feeding your ego, because remember, like my channel along with Psych Substance, we were like basically the first wave of the new kind of psychedelic YouTube space. So I got in like really, really early before talking about psychedelics was kind of cool, and people are way more open about it now. You see trip reports all over, but at the start, people like look at you like, oh man, you're such an awesome person spreading the truth and kind of feeding your ego. You're so wise and spiritual and I want to be like you. But then they don't look behind the scenes and I was still like a broken person. I was doing my best and I was always honest about where I was, but you can only be honest about what you know, the truth about yourself. So in other words, I was honest where I was, but I couldn't see the kind of, I couldn't see from like a more objective standpoint and be really critical with myself. So.
Agreed, man. I loved our conversation today. This has been it covered a lot of ground. It was very honest. I guarantee you the people who don't talk about their relationship to this stuff publicly, nobody knows, I bet they will glean a lot from our conversation today.
I hope so, man.
I hope so too. Glory to God. Hopefully
very stimulating conversation. It's awesome. Like you're like it's like the perfect guy to speak to about this kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And I feel like more and more, and it's beautiful to see more and more people open themselves up to this. And it's becoming, especially in these end times, I feel like in times of crisis and revelation, where like it's very almost normal for people to look somewhere else because they know this isn't working.
Right.
And the new age will never fulfill your soul. You're always going to be chasing. I know it's a very absolute fact, but man, I haven't seen it any other way. It just won't fulfill you in the way that you think.
Right.
So just be honest.
On it. That's what I try to do.
Yeah.
I struggle at that. Even that. I struggle at everything. Orthodox Phronesis donated $5. He said, if Tom gets discouraged or angry with himself about his past, I'd like to refer to this verse. Genesis chapter 4, verse 13. This is where Cain says to God, quote, my guilt is too great to be forgiven. Just remember, Christ forgives all. and don't let the demons convince you otherwise.
Thank you for that. I needed to hear that.
Yes, thank
you. I
you.
can be really, really tough on myself. So it's good to,
absolutely
take it easy.
Brother,
because even when you put yourself down, it's like you think it's like humility, but humility is about like not raising yourself higher than God, but also don't lower yourself than the earth. You got to just know. It's about knowing your place. It's been a tricky game that I've gotten myself into, and it is a game. That's what I've realized, and that perhaps maybe even why I had so many profound psychedelic experiences. I was talking to a friend of mine, because just to go on a little bit of a tangent, but
sure.
He's like really deep into Aboriginal culture.
Okay.
And I've been learning about their indigenous beliefs, and they're actually, if you hear most psychonauts, they just assume that Aboriginals do DMT or something because acacia's everywhere in Australia, and
right,
the indigenous must dream time. It must be about
dream
psychedelics.
Time. Yep.
But from what I've and listen, there's a lot of cultures. I'm not going to speak on behalf of the First Nation people, especially as a white Australian man. But from the elders that I've spoken to and who my friend has spoken to, they're actually actively against psychedelics. And this is not coming from a Christian framework whatsoever. So the fact that they believe that psychedelics basically entities, basically you're taking a sacrament and then you're entering their game, have to play by their rules,
right?
And you don't know what can kind of attach to you. So that's why they do these practices to kind of flush out these entities or whatever. So I just kind of found that fascinating, that even within indigenous culture, at least the particular one that I've come in contact with, they're just actively against psychedelics. They're like, nope, don't ever do it. You don't need it.
Yeah, that reminds me. I constructed a course for my PhD program on the historical religious use of psychedelics, talking about shamanistic formations of religion all around the world. Then got into ancient civilizations, then got into the main world religions, then got into magic, then got into the New Age. And in the week where we study North America shamanism, you can find the peyote groups towards the south, but you can also look at the Apaches, where they totally they were not in favor of psychedelics because they believe that it broke up the group unity, which is very different from when you look at South American shamanism, where they all do ayahuasca together. The shaman sings the Icaros. They all see the beautiful colors. He's shooting arrows to the opposing shaman downstream.
I was just about to mention that, actually. Yeah, there's a lot of ego games and wars against shamans.
Right.
That's why they do protect that. That's why they have to protect the space. It's not even just for spiritual entities. It's for shamans, like infiltrating the space. So
from my reading, the Apaches had experiences where the tribe, certain people would engage in group inebriation, and people would take out unconscious beliefs or emotions that they had deep inside themselves on the people during those states. And so they had like young men attacking their parents because of something that happened years ago. They had people just destroying each other verbally in front of each other. So they saw the psychedelics as breaking the sort of moral code that actually helped keep the society and the group together. And so they ended up pushing and doing away with psychedelics altogether within their formation, which is different, again, because you had all these different tribes across North America, and they had different approaches to this stuff.
Oh, yeah. Dude, that's so fascinating. Is there like a book or somewhere I can read more about this?
Yeah, you can actually... Here, let me just grab the book. So this book right here, Hallucinogens and Shamanism by Michael Harner, this was written in the 70s. This is a book that Terence McKenna used to promote quite a bit. And so it has these different chapters, and they're written by different people. And they're on different topics. A lot of them have to do with Amazonian shamanism. But one, shamanism and peyote use among the Apaches of the Mescalero Indian Reservation. And so if you flip over to that's 53. It's really fascinating because it talks about how they did away with it. Yeah, so and shamanistic rituals resulted in serious conflict and ultimately proscription of the ceremonial use of drugs. So they stopped doing it. This contribution.
Why is this? Have you noticed? Like, it's interesting that this is never mentioned. Like,
Right.
Whenever we talk, like the psychedelic world anyway, whenever we talk about indigenous tribes, it's like we just assume that, yeah, psychedelics are normal. Everyone did psychedelics. Obviously, they're good. Right. But then you never look at these particular examples, or even in the mainstream examples, like the Mayan and Aztecs, like they were doing human sacrifice at the end. So
exactly, dude. The Aztecs.
How can you ignore that? I just don't understand how you can just put that aside as just ignore that. Don't worry about it.
Yeah. So this chapter. So here's the last sentence of the opening paragraph. We then examine some of the reasons why its use was abandoned and why their accredited shamanistic practices subsequently have excluded the use of all hallucinogens.
Whoa. They banned it.
Yeah, so the Apache tribe, they banned hallucinogens because they saw it breaking up the tribe, not bringing them together. But yeah,
there you go.
You because again, just like you said, the lies, how they spread so much faster. But at least again, these people were in promotion of psychedelics. But at least they wrote an honest article, talking about an opinion that went against it. But yeah, it's
maybe it's that hope that it's like, oh, there's a wrong way to do it, but maybe we can do it the right way. But then again, that kind of falls. It's that man worshipping. It's like just relying on yourself that you can get over your sinful nature. Right. You know what I mean? Because man is God at the end of the day. Right. So there isn't enough humility to say like, no, I'm not strong enough to go through this realm and come out the other side properly. Right. People just assume they're like, yeah, I can handle it. No worries.
It's true.
Until it slaps them in the face and they're begging on their knees.
Right. Well, shoot.
And emailing me. Please, Tom. I told you.
Imagine the treachery that would happen if, like, just a random town in the United States, if everybody took psychedelics together. The crime, the who knows? Again, because it almost catalyzes the person you are already. I mean, it can also dramatically change who you are. But the Aztecs, this is why I think, again, the long-term use of this stuff ultimately leads to self-worship and Satanism, is the Aztecs are a perfect example of a culture that used mushrooms in a ritualistic way that built a civilization. Right? You can point to psychedelic use in Egypt. Usually, once you get into the ancient civilizations, the psychedelic use became more of a priestly craft practice. So instead of the group doing it like you'd see in tribal formations, a lot more people are partaking in it. Sometimes it's just the shaman. So it depends on the tribe, but more people tend to partake. Once you start getting into built civilizations within, real empires, well, it begins more to be a priest craft that does it. Well, the Aztecs, it was central to their society. What did they do? They literally cut human heads off. Let them roll down the temple. They drink blood. They do human sacrifice. Like, what does the Bible say Satan does? And it's like literally all that stuff. Literally.
Oh, yeah. And they still do ceremonies today. I was actually going to go to Mexico before this whole lockdown thing happened, and I was going to enter a mushroom ceremony. But I feel like that culture, that Aztec culture, is still there. Now they've infused with Catholicism. It's like very heavily Catholic, but also integrated with Aztec culture.
It is a
so it's still there, minus the sacrifice, at least publicly.
Right.
Who knows?
Well, shoot, there's a famous article from Henry Munn. I think this is the early 60s, late 50s. That's another chapter in this book. And it's called The Mushrooms of Language. And he was one of the early scholars to go study a shaman in northern Mexico. Again, we have R. Gordon Wasson with Maria Sabina.
Maria Sabina.
Yep, she was a famous one. But you have another case where the mushroom helpers, the mushrooms gave powers to the special privileges of language to communicate and all this different stuff. And it was mixed. Again, it's like Catholicism, tribal formation and sort of Aztec culture. It's all kind of fused together, and that stuff still exists and is operating in Mexico. Go into the mountains of Mexico, you'll find it.
Oh yeah, even a good friend of mine who's like much deeper into this stuff is also quite a famous YouTuber. But he told me a story about how he went into a mushroom ceremony and he asked the mushroom, "Show me your true form," and then the mushroom showed up to be like this huge, like sort of like a demonic monster sort of thing. So I just thought that was interesting to share because he's not totally not a Christian framework whatsoever. So it's not even a bias. Right. And he asked the mushroom, and Terence McKenna had a similar thing. Like he asked the mushroom, "What's your true form?" And it turned out to be something like really terrifying.
Right. It was
that's how I felt when I went to the higher doses of the mushroom experience, because the lower doses, it was like a little cute girl, like, "Hey, come play with me." Right. But then you go to the higher doses and you realize that little girl is actually a tentacle attached to like a much bigger monster, right, sort of thing. Like a way to lure you in this. Like that. I've come to these insights a few times. I don't know whether it's absolutely true or not, but it seems to be a common pattern. Even Terence McKenna, he said psychedelics are very forgiving to newbies and
right. I mean,
not very to veterans.
I mean, I believe I've heard you mention, but Terence had a really bad trip at the end of his life.
Yeah, he didn't. As far as I understand, he didn't ever have a heavy trip after that. Maybe small doses here or there, but he never had a heavy trip after that.
Yeah.
So it's funny how people spread his heroic dose thing, but I don't even think he would have agreed with that at the end of his life. I think that a lot of his lectures got shared before he came to these bigger revelations.
Well, that's what even Dennis's brother has mentioned, that he felt very conflicted with his body of work right before he died. And
yeah,
I mean,
I think he died estranged to his family, and like I don't want to judge the guy for that, like therefore he's speaking wrong, but I don't think you should ignore that either.
Right.
You got to look at the long term. What is the logical conclusion of following this lifestyle? It's important.
Right. And the hedonism and the sex. He was a big promoter of sexual promiscuity, the sexual liberation. He was a promoter of homosexuality, all that different stuff. Again, all transgressions of boundaries, which he believed was all.
That's when, and a lot of people go that path as well, because even I was during, like in the middle of my psychedelic journey, even I was like, oh, maybe we should go into an open relationship. Luckily, I slapped myself out of that silly notion very quick.
It would
no way.
Yeah.
It would, 100%. And even the guy like Aubrey Marcus, who was like the biggest speaker of open relationships, now he's married. So the guy who's like spreading this stuff the most.
Oh, and he ruined the relationship with the woman that he had been with and had kids with for, I mean, it was like 15 years or something. He had known that woman and they had been together. And then they go into the open relationship and he totally destroys it. And she ended up falling in love with the other guy.
Yep.
And it's like, well, dude, you feminized yourself to elevate him as a more masculine man in the dynamic, because he's not the one that's sharing her with him. He's sharing her with the other guy. And it's like, again, we can't get away from the correct order. A man has to be a man, and a woman is always going to be attracted to it. And
even the hardcore feminists who think that they hate men, deep down, primordially, they're still attracted to a manly man. Right. I just don't see. Absolutely. I don't see how a woman can be attracted to a feminized, like really weak, cowardly person. It's just not attractive.
No, I think
not even as a woman. Go on.
You go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to say that like it's not even unattractive for a woman, but even as a guy, seeing another guy be kind of cowardly and weak, it's like,
I don't think women do either. It's like women want control, and so they like weak men because they're easier to control, usually through sex. A weak man can be controlled easily through sex, access to sex. But once they control them, they don't respect them and they don't want them, because a woman obviously wants something she can't control. Exactly. Obviously, that's not the right dynamic, but at least in terms of the sexual getting going, the dynamic, right? And so,
well, I've had that attitude throughout my entire relationship, and we're like more closer than we've ever been. because I still have my boundaries. If I need to leave, sorry, babe, I gotta go to this country for a couple months, or like I just kind of do what I need to do, instead of like, oh, is it okay if I, like kind of tiptoeing around? Can I have your permission? It's still a mutual respect, because it's not like I'm doing this. Again, I guess it's a one flesh relationship, right? At the end of the day,
right?
But yeah.
No, I totally agree. That's why that's why I don't blame women, even though it's harder to find a wife and a good mother nowadays than maybe it was 50 years ago. But I don't blame women for that necessarily. I blame it on weak men. I blame the degradation of Western civilization. Of course, again, we've talked about the whole problem of the schism and what progressivism really is a progressive movement away from God and the original church. But that weak men are what have allowed all this stuff to exist. Weak men are why people are still wearing masks, here, or children still. I saw children still wearing masks in a place that didn't mandate masks. Well, as a woman and a husband, and they're both. It's weak men. If men are strong, everything falls in order, and that's why God is the Father, because He's the ultimate form of strength, and He puts all things in. That's why we refer to God, the Trinity, as a He. It's not that man and woman are that a woman is so much lesser. In fact, we can even say that, well, a woman, God made the visible beauty of man better with the woman. And that's why even women are attracted to beautiful women. There's something aesthetic about a woman that men don't have. Now, a man can be great fit and strong, but you're not attracted to the physique. Looks great, but there's something more about it. It's his strength. It's his discipline. It's like, but a woman, there's something so seductive to a woman's frame. The curves, the hips, the breast. It's like, wow. So it's like God perfected the aesthetic of man in the woman. And the Theotokos in Orthodoxy, we can't get higher than the Theotokos. The closest thing to God that was fully human is a woman. It's Mary. The closest thing to God that you and I, we're fully human. We're not we're not fully God, fully man like Jesus. So taking Him out of the equation, the closest thing is the woman that gave birth to Him.
Yeah, Mother of God.
So it's a different perspective on male-female dynamics, but
it isn't better or worse. It's just different roles, and some of us have like different strengths than others. And I feel like for one, the women make all the people in the world. That's pretty freaking incredible, dude.
Well,
no way. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do that.
And when you see somebody that has good manners, it's because they probably had a good mother, And then if they actually stay within boundaries and they're a strong contributor to society, they probably had a good father. And so having that dynamic is essential. It's essential to raising children.
Having that healthy mother-father relationship, because mine fell apart very quickly, like my parents. So I didn't really get my authority from that until later in life. But my fiance, she had two very awesome, loving parents, and she has a very good relationship with her father, which makes sense why she doesn't.
And that's probably why she's more feminine, and she can cook and clean and wants a man to be a man, because she's seen the role of that and how that puts everything into place. Because it's the men that set boundaries, the men that build structures. A metaphor I've heard is that men are the walls to the castle. The women are the jewels that it's trying to protect. Right? They're visibly beautiful. They're worth more if you find a good one, but they're not there. They're not protected without the men who are the walls. They have to have boundaries. They can only exist in a space where men have created the boundaries. And so now we live in a Western civilization where men have destroyed those boundaries, and now men compete with women in sports because those women can't be protected because the boundaries are broken. The men aren't there to protect it.
It's all inverted, really, because it's the children who run the household. Because if you think about it, the man listens to the wife, which listens to the children. So it's like all inverted. And I've seen it within my own family, of certain families falling apart because the man isn't being a man. You're just listening to your wife And a lot of the time she's got like mental health issues. She's struggling with emotional problems. And then that's being passed on to the kid. And then she's listening to the kid, and the husband's listening to the wife. So it's the child. It's like a unstable emotional child who's running the household. Right. And I see that a lot in society.
It's so
kids
true.
Rule.
It's so true.
That's why commercials are made for the kids, man, not the parents.
Right. Well, that in Satan. So who does Jesus say is closest to him? The children. Why are they closest? Because they're innocent. And so the whole sexualization of children it's an extremely demonic and satanic effort to take away the innocence of children, to make them sexual objects. So if you have a 3-year-old who says, "No, I'm not a boy, I'm a girl," that automatically, by definition, sexualizes him. Because now it's claiming that he has a sexual conscience. And if he has a sexual conscience, therefore he's a sexual being. And therefore, that's why we're now seeing people that, kids should be exposed to the LGBTQ, that kids should understand what consensual sex. No, this is all pure evil. This is demonic spirits at work. Because again, 100%. Christ tells us that the children are close to he is the lover of the innocent. The lover of the innocent. Christ loves the innocent. And that's why also the women, everything is aimed towards the children and the women, and then the feminization of the men, because all those three things go together. And so what stops all of it? Strong men with tradition, with boundaries, breaks it all down. It stops it. Because now if you're connected with Source God and you're willing to die for it and you have boundaries to protect, the game's over. And you can't lose. You may lose your life, but by people seeing you willingly do that, that's martyrdom. That's how the church spreads. It always spreads. The church always spreads in the face of threat because martyrdom transforms the people who see it happen.
Well, it's very powerful to see someone die for what they believe in. There's nothing more powerful than that.
Right.
And I don't even. Like you said, man, it's weak men. That's mostly the problem here. Yeah, it's all, and we're all set up. And to be fair, like I don't want to again because it's that this whole society is set up for us to be effeminate, and it's so easy to just eat junk food, and just the way our comfortable, cushy life has been set up, it's very easy to fall into that effeminate nature of just being in this comfort zone and really not standing up for truth or justice because, I'm good, not my problem. I'll do me, you do you, and it just becomes more individualized. But then that fractures the families. Right. You know this stuff better than anyone. So
absolutely. And I was thinking too with the cannabis. We tend to smoke the female plant, and how does that feminize people as well? Just as a general practice.
It definitely feminizes people in that it makes you more emotional. More sensitive.
Well, unless
for sure.
Go ahead. I don't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
I don't know. And I would also say that it just makes you comfortable. It makes like the way that I explain being stoned is that it makes being bored fun. So in other words, if you're just sitting on your couch doing absolutely nothing, stone cold sober, you're probably going to be more likely to get up and do something because you want to stimulate yourself and do something. But when you smoke weed, I can just sit on this couch, do absolutely nothing, and I'll be happy. I'll love it. I'll be loving life.
Right.
So it makes you don't have to actually do anything to get.
And that's why the man is the active principle and the woman is the receptive principle. And so again, I think that is feminizing just as a general context because you become more of a recipient of the world, right? You get in that inebriated state of which, again, that's what I struggle with. That's the sort of passionate addiction, right? In that whole inebriation process is that, okay, I don't have to be the active role anymore. I can just be the recipient to the world. And that's what women are. And that men, again, to be masculine is to like always sort of be on that active live edge.
Elliot Holst talks a lot about this because he went through his whole new age effeminate stage, and then I'm finding Catholicism. Let's pray that he'll find orthodoxy.
Exactly.
I'm sure he will.
Hopefully he gets but at least he's Christian. At least he's talking about Jesus Christ now.
Yeah. Because he's always struck me as the kind of character that is on a genuine search for truth.
Exactly. And that's why he's gone through so many transformations, and I can totally relate to him. I watched a video of somebody who used to be his follower, and it was on like the rise and fall of Elliot Holst. And it was on how bad he is now. But in my mind, it's like I relate to that guy even more, even if he's Catholic and I disagree with this. The dude is genuinely like he's putting in the work. And I know what that's like because I'm trying to do the same thing. So that only ingratiates me closer to him as, okay, well, let me listen to what he has to say because at least he's an active, truthful seeker looking at the world and bringing his perspective. I might not agree. He may have something that gives me something that I don't see, though. But at least I can trust that it's Elliot Hulse and it's what Elliot Hulse thinks at that moment, and he's trying to actually pursue truth.
Exactly.
That's all I need.
You can tell he's genuine, and you can tell that he embodies a lot of his truth. He's like very physical. Like when he goes into something, he'll go all out. You know, I actually interviewed him on my channel not too long ago.
Oh, you did?
But this was before he found Catholicism, and I reached out to him earlier this year, but just chaos has ensued, so I've got to follow up and interview him again, but with his newfound faith.
That'd be great. That would be great. I definitely need to tune into that one. We had a new super chat while we've been chit-chatting by Marcos Ramos, threw in $1.99 and said, Panagia Theotokos Soson Imas. And so that is Theotokos save us. And agreed. Please, Theotokos save us. So thank you very much, Marcos Ramos, for that super chat. Well, brother, we have been talking for literally 3.5 hours. So I didn't.
Oh, that's crazy.
I know I didn't plan. But that.
There you go.
I feel like again, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you for your time. Thank you for joining me over here on my little lonely little YouTube channel. But
my lonely island. Yeah.
But.
Don't worry, I'm sure I'll lose half my subscribers the more I go into it. Maybe gain some more in the future, but it's not about that. I know it's not about that.
I know, but it's hard to.
But it sucks.
It does. It does because people don't understand unless they create content, how difficult it is to build followings. And so it's not easy just to create content either. You know, I've had people say, "Oh, it must be nice. You just click the live and go live. And you just talk to people." And do you understand how many hours? Again, it's a process.
Yeah.
This is a job. This is work, and I have other things I have to do too. I have a life. It's like, no, this is not easy.
It's not, dude, even me going on this interview took me a year preparation to even feel comfortable about talking this stuff. And this is not even my channel. So it goes to show that it does require a lot of work and a lot of deprogramming as well. It's hard, but it's worth it.
It is worth it.
It's definitely worth it. There's no other way.
Well, brother, thank you so much. God bless you.
Thanks, brother.
And your soon-to-be wife. Glory to you guys. Many years. Looking forward to the family that is built and the generational ripples that are already occurring through your decisions you're making now. So, again, glory to God. It's been a lot of fun. We'll definitely have to do it again in the future. Maybe in 6 months or so. We'll read a little scripture and then we'll reconvene on a new topic and talk about Christ a little bit more.
For sure, man. And the invitation's open to come on my channel.
I'm
eventually
down. Hey, you let me
you
let me know when and I'm there.
I think I'm at that stage now where it's like there's a lot for me to learn. I feel like an absolute noob when it comes to orthodoxy and philosophy and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like I've grasped the foundational stuff that I can at least start talking about it and unpack as I go along.
What might be useful is just talking about orthodoxy or the new age in the light of orthodoxy, and really just talk about new age concepts and how they're similar, how they're distorted, how they're inversion, again, of just orthodox theology. So it's not like we're pushing Jesus on anybody.
Exactly. Yeah, that comes later,
showing
folks.
Concepts in the new age, and how, hey, the idea that you're God. Yeah. Well, have you ever heard of theosis? Have you ever thought about how exactly do you become God? How do you know that you are God outside your own experience? Just throwing these things out there. So maybe that'd be a useful conversation.
I think that's probably where I'm going to start or continue is bringing down the new age. I think that will probably be my first phase, and then we'll continue. Yeah.
Well, Awesome, brother.
See how we go.
God bless your work. God bless your future. God bless your family. So thank you, everyone who has super chatted. Very special thank you to everyone who has participated and joined us for our 3.5-hour conversation. So we will check you next time. I should be back probably Saturday or Sunday with another stream, most likely Sunday. So I will see you guys then. And until next time, as always, God bless.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, guys, and thanks for having me on, brother. Appreciate it.
Of course.
I'm sure this is just the start of the journey, so it'll be interesting. I'm sure we'll look back on this moment like, whoa, man, that was quite a milestone. You know, you could tell I was like in a heavy transitional period. So we'll see. Excellent. Unless you check back in a year from now and I'm just a Satanist or something. Hopefully not.
Well, we definitely have a whole community that will be praying for that not to be the case. So again,
I hope so.
Again, guys, anybody's watching this, give a prayer tonight for Tom and Yesenia. Did I pronounce that right?
Yesenia or Yesenia.
Yesenia. So pray for them, pray for their marriage, pray for their conversion to Orthodoxy, pray for their relationship with Christ. We have a lot of good prayer warriors in this community, so they would be more than happy to try to help in your journey. So again, thank you, everyone. God bless.